Chapter 241 The City of the Dead 100 miles west of Nanchuan City, nestled among the mountains, shrouded in mist, lay a small city concealed within a primeval wilderness. This city possessed all the infrastructure one would expect: an airport, hospitals, schools, everything a typical city would have. However, all the buildings were black, covered with intricate curses, which would instantly kill any ordinary person who touched them. Aside from the fact that the city was cursed, its very existence within a primeval wilderness was extremely eerie. Even stranger, there was no record of this city on any Xia dynasty maps, and the outside world was completely unaware of its existence. This city of the dead was the headquarters of the Death Gate. Usually, this primeval wilderness was sparsely populated, and few Death Gate disciples were in the city. But today, a large number of Death Gate disciples, either traveling through the wilderness alone or arriving by helicopter and small private planes, were rapidly returning to the city of the dead. The usually quiet city felt exceptionally lively today. "Old Chu, I thought you were on a mission in the south? Why did you suddenly come back today? Don't even mention it. I suddenly received a message from the sect leader telling me to drop everything and return to the Death Gate as quickly as possible. I thought something had happened to the sect." "Huh? Me too. I also received a message from the sect leader and came back from the north. My curse was almost ready to take effect." "Old Lin, you too?" "I also got a message from the sect leader." Inside the small airport outside the city of the dead, a large number of Death Gate disciples were discussing the sect leader's urgent summons back to the sect, assuming the sect leader was going to announce something important. After all, having all the Death Gate disciples scattered across the land return to the sect was an unprecedented event. "What's going on here? Why have you all returned to the city of the dead? Have you abandoned your missions?" An old man dressed in black emerged from the depths of the city of the dead, his face livid as he scanned the crowd, questioning them sternly. His name was Xianxia, the great protector of the sect leader, Yuan, and the one responsible for managing the city of the dead and issuing missions to the Death Gate disciples. Now that all the disciples had returned, he was furious. "Protector Shang, weren't we urgently summoned by the sect leader?" A senior Death Gate member stepped forward and asked Xianxia. "The sect leader is currently at a crucial point in his seclusion. How could he possibly summon you back? You have all been deceived." Xianxia was infuriated. "Quickly find out. Who sent this fake message? How dare they mock my Death Gate?" The Death Gate relied on taking orders from outside clients to earn money to maintain the entire city. Now that all the Death Gate members had abandoned their current missions and returned, it would be a huge financial loss for the Death Gate. Xianxia didn't need to imagine the full extent of the sect leader's wrath once he found out. "We found it." The message originated from Nanchuan City. A technician from the Death Gate pinpointed the signal's location and immediately reported. "Nanchuan City?" Hearing the report, Xianxia frowned slightly. Hui is leading a team there to investigate the Church of Light. What exactly are they doing? Having mentioned the Church of Light, Xianxia realized that something was wrong and immediately ordered, "Contact Hui immediately and send a team to Nanchuan City to investigate the situation." Xianxia, the sect leader's great protector and manager of the city, was an extremely capable man. He immediately issued orders in an orderly manner. Although he had no idea what the other party's purpose was in deceiving all the Death Gate disciples back to the city, the Death Gate had not suffered any substantial losses, and everything could still be salvaged. By staying still, he could face any unexpected change. As long as the city of the dead was not invaded, everything would be all right. At the same time, outside the city of the dead, in the primeval wilderness, Sister Qing cut through the thorns blocking her way, turned back to look at Baiyu, and trembled as she said, "Master, the Death Gate headquarters, the city of the dead, is just ahead." At this time, the most distant disciple should have already returned. "I've done everything you asked me to do, so?" Baiyu looked ahead, able to vaguely see a black city through the dense fog. She smiled slightly and said to Sister Qing, "I like to keep my word. You can leave." "Thank you, Master." A look of wild joy appeared on Sister Qing's face. She then plunged into the primeval wilderness without looking back, fearing Baiyu might change her mind. Sister Qing ran wildly in the wilderness for a while. After confirming that Bai Yu was not following, she muttered to herself, I must go back and report on what happened in Nanchuan City. The man beside Zhang Zixuan is too powerful. She had never thought about leaving the Death Gate. She had always planned to take a side path to quickly return to the City of the Dead after escaping Bai Yu. The members of the Death Gate were extremely adept at curses, and the fact that she had faked the sect leader's message and tricked all the members to return to the city would be exposed sooner or later. If she didn't redeem herself, no matter where she fled, she would be targeted by the curses of the Death Gate and would ultimately meet a gruesome end. For Sister Qing, her only chance to survive was to bring all the information about Bai Yu back to the Death Gate and redeem herself. In the distance, Bai Yu, aware of all of Sister Qing's actions, had a faint smile on his lips. He didn't care about Sister Qing's return to inform the others. He had kept his promise and given Sister Qing a chance to live. Now that Sister Qing had chosen to walk the path to death herself, he couldn't be blamed. Ignoring Sister Qing, who was taking the side path back to the City of the Dead, Bai Yu slowly approached the city, his divine sense covering the entire city, examining every detail of the place. Building a modern city in a primeval wilderness, this Death Gate leader is an interesting person. Bai Yu smiled, and after a while, reached the edge of the City of the Dead. The last Death Gate member had just landed his private plane at the tarmac outside the city. The tarmac was now filled with private planes and helicopters. The Death Gate members in their luxurious clothing were chatting in twos and threes below their aircraft, showing off the wealth of the Death Gate. The aircraft alone on the tarmac were worth billions, not to mention the luxury cars parked in the city, none of which were worth less than $1 million. This Death Gate is quite wealthy. I wonder how many despicable acts they have done over the years. Bai Yu had witnessed the Death Gate's curse techniques and was aware that the Death Gate survived by accepting commissions to earn their keep. Every Death Gate member had the blood of countless innocent people on their hands. None of the Death Gate members were innocent. Hey, look over there. Who is that guy? A Death Gate member noticed Bai Yu walking out of the primeval wilderness and called out, immediately attracting the attention of everyone on the tarmac. At this moment, Sister Qing also arrived from the side path. Her pupils constricted when she saw that Bai Yu had already arrived at the City of the Dead. She hurriedly shouted at the other Death Gate members, Everyone be careful. He has come to destroy our Death Gate. Chapter 242. Kneel and accept your death. When Sister Qing shouted, the Death Gate members on the tarmac were first stunned, and then they all burst out laughing. Sister Qing? Are you confused? He wants to destroy our Death Gate all by himself? That's wishful thinking. The guy who wants to destroy us, his luck is really bad today. All of the members of the Death Gate are back. Sister Qing, I remember you went to Nanchuan City with Tiger to complete a mission, right? Was it you who summoned us all back? The Death Gate members laughed loudly, not taking Sister Qing's warning seriously at all, instead starting to target her. Why you? Sister Qing didn't expect this kind of situation when she returned, but she didn't know how to describe Bai Yu's strength. She could only say, he killed Tiger and Xiao Su, and forced me to deceive you all back to the City of the Dead. You all need to be careful. So, it really was you who tricked us into coming back? Do you know how much money we lost because of this? The others still didn't take Sister Qing's warning to heart, instead started questioning her with unkind eyes. Those who could join the Death Gate were basically ruthless and vicious people who enjoyed torturing others. They had no empathy, caring only about their own interests. Now that Sister Qing had confessed to tricking everyone into returning to the city, the crowd's hostility immediately turned to her. As for Bai Yu's threat, no one present paid any attention to it. Bai Yu, however, was happy to watch a good show of infighting. He didn't say anything and just stood outside the city, watching the Death Gate members target Sister Qing. You all have to believe me. That guy is really terrifying. Go and inform the Great Protector. Seeing that everyone ignored Bai Yu and instead started targeting her, Sister Qing became increasingly anxious and regretted returning to the City of the Dead. She looked at the crowd's mocking eyes and felt despair. Forget it. If you want to die, don't drag me with you. Sister Qing gave up trying to warn them and prepared to flee the Death Gate, not wanting to be caught in the coming battle. However, Just as Sister Ching was about to leave, she suddenly felt an itch on her face, and she scratched at it instinctively. To her horror, she clawed off a large piece of skin. This is... Looking at the skin in her hand, Sister Ching's pupils constricted. She looked at the Death Gate members and cried out, "Who cursed me? Come out." Faced with Sister Ching's question, the Death Gate members didn't answer and just looked at her with mocking eyes. It was as if Sister Ching was a person who was about to die and didn't know it, pitiful and laughable. As Sister Ching scratched off a piece of skin from her face, her whole face became incredibly ugly. Her skin all over her body began to fester, as if countless insects were tearing at every part of her body. And no. Sister Ching's bones began to twist. Her face was filled with endless agony, and tears flowed from her eyes. "Spare me. Please, spare me. Don't curse me. Ah, what a pity." Sister Ching was a beauty in our Death Gate, but someone was willing to use such a vile curse on her. I just cast a molting curse on her. The other curses were not done by me. Hee. I just improved the bone-melting curse on Sister Ching, and now it seems the test is working well. The crowd watched Sister Ching in agony, either sighing or gloating, with not a trace of pity. It was as if the one dying in front of them was just a lab rat. Baiyu witnessed Sister Ching's entire death process, which lasted for over 10 minutes, and from the initial painful screams, her throat was eventually cursed, leaving her to die silently. I gave you a chance to live, but you didn't cherish it. Baiyu's gaze was indifferent. Dying at the hands of your own people is the fate you deserve. After witnessing Sister Ching's death, the last bit of sympathy Baiyu had for the Death Gate members vanished. A transparent barrier rose silently outside the city of the dead. From that moment on, the entire city of the dead became a place that could only be entered, not exited. That's right, there's still that idiot. Let's try our new curses on him. The Death Gate members didn't realize what was about to happen to them and turned to look at Baiyu with malicious intent. In their eyes, even if Baiyu really had the strength to kill this was the city of the dead, the place where all the world's vile curses gathered. Even a divine immortal would have to suffer a painful death under these endless curses. Let me try. I just invented a new curse, and I am missing a test subject. A Death Gate member chuckled and stepped forward, sizing Baiyu up. This is a good test material. With that, the Death Gate member began to form a strange hand seal. A strange surge of spiritual energy was evident, indicating that he was beginning to cast a curse. Humph! Baiyu watched the Death Gate member who intended to curse him, just scoffed and lifted his hand to draw him in. The Death Gate member, still immersed in his curse, suddenly felt a powerful suction from Baiyu's palm. Then, under everyone's gaze, he was sucked into Baiyu's palm. You! The Death Gate member looked at Baiyu in shock, and before he could even shout, bang! Baiyu instantly crushed the Death Gate member's head. A headless corpse slowly collapsed to the ground before Baiyu, crimson blood spreading across the white concrete. The tarmac, which had a jovial atmosphere just moments ago, was now completely silent. Everyone stared at the headless corpse in front of Baiyu, stunned. What just happened? After a while, someone finally reacted and asked, He is not friendly. Go notify the Great Protector. Everyone, let's fight together. Don't be careless. With Baiyu killing a Death Gate member with a casual flick of his wrist, everyone finally reacted and realized that Sister Ching's warning was real. But now, Sister Ching had been killed by their own hands. The members now had no room for regrets, and they all focused on dealing with Baiyu. In an instant, a large number of curses fell on Baiyu. The Death Gate members used the most vicious curses they could think of, trying to make Baiyu suffer a gruesome death. However, no matter how many curses were piled on Baiyu, he wasn't affected in the slightest. Instead, the Death Gate members on the tarmac became pale because of their excessive use of spiritual power. Damn it! Just who is this guy? Why are none of the curses working? Everyone, quickly retreat into the city. The city can strengthen our curses? The Death Gate members were now in a panic and began to run towards the city of the dead. Kneel down and accept your death. However, just as the Death Gate members were about to enter the city, Bayu's cold and indifferent voice rang out in their ears. Then, everyone felt a terrifying pressure on their shoulders. Their legs could no longer support them, and they all knelt down. Bang! As everyone knelt, their bodies exploded simultaneously. In an instant, the tarmac was cleared. Blood stained the white ground red. Chapter 243. The Dead City's Curses. Bayu stood alone on the blood-soaked ground, looking at the dark city before him, his deep eyes devoid of any pity. What's going on outside? Hearing the explosions and smelling the blood, the Death Gate members rushed out from the city. Seeing Bayu standing on the crimson ground, their pupils all constricted. However, before those who had rushed out could understand the situation, their bodies also exploded, the scarlet blood splashing onto the pitch-black city of the dead. A thick stench of blood permeated the city. More and more Death Gate members noticed the strangeness outside the city, and they rushed towards the city gate, but it was as if they were under some kind of curse. As soon as they stepped out of the city, they would explode. Seeing that everyone who left the city had died, those in the back dared not go out. They stayed put at the city gate. Look, someone's coming in. The Death Gate members who were cowering inside the city saw Bayu stepping through the blood and exclaimed in shock, the astonishment on their faces impossible to hide. At this moment, Xianxia, who had noticed the commotion, finally arrived. He saw the pile of gore outside the city, and his eyes narrowed slightly. What happened again? Great Protector, it seems like the brothers have been hit by some unknown curse. As long as they leave the city, they explode. A Death Gate member briefly explained everything that had happened to Xianxia. A curse that explodes people when they leave the city? Xianxia looked at Bayu and shouted loudly, "Hey, brother, which powerful clan do you belong to? What is your business with our Death Gate?" In Xiangxia's eyes, the fact that Bayu could kill so many of their curse-proficient Death Gate disciples with a single curse meant his strength was far beyond that of an ordinary expert. Faced with such a mysterious powerhouse, Xianxia would not act rashly without understanding the opponent's background. As the Death Gate's great protector, he understood the immense power of curses. Once someone was targeted by a curse master, they could die without even realizing it. In response to Xianxia's questions, Bayu remained silent, merely walking straight into the city of the dead. The moment Bayu stepped into the city, the curses of the entire city activated, all targeting Bayu. Seeing a large number of curse symbols rushing toward Bayu along the ground, Xianxia couldn't help but be puzzled. Could I have been mistaken? Is that guy just an idiot who doesn't know anything? Every building, every brick in the city of the dead contained countless curses. Anyone who was not a member of the Death Gate would be instantly cursed and die in endless pain. No matter how powerful a curse master was, they would choose to stay outside the city after seeing it and would not cross that line. Bayu's actions now completely exposed him as an outsider in the world of curses. Looks like I was overthinking things. Thinking this, Xianxia's lips curled into a subtle smile, his eyes full of mockery. He seemed to see the miserable state of Bayu as he was tormented by endless curses. But soon, the smile on Xianxia's face stiffened. The curse symbols on the city's buildings all stopped just before they reached Bayu. Then, they reversed direction and attached themselves to the Death Gate members. As the curses of the city descended, a large number of Death Gate members let out painful wails, finally dying in endless torment. What is going on? Xianxia watched in terror as the city's curses were applied to one Death Gate disciple after another, the fear in his eyes growing ever more intense as he retreated backward. He had never seen anything like this before. At the same time, Bayu never stopped walking. He continued to advance, unhurried, and the number of Death Gate members in the city who were being cursed kept increasing. Quick, get away from that guy. He can control the city's curses. The Death Gate members who had not been cursed realized that the city's curse symbols were spreading towards the city's interior as Bayu advanced. They immediately cried out, warning the others in the city. The other Death Gate members who had not been cursed all reacted. Not daring to stay where they were, they retreated wildly. Xianxia, still in shock, saw that the city's curse symbols had reached his feet. He dared not touch them and retreated madly. After the Death Gate members started retreating, the city's curses gradually couldn't keep up with their speed, and no one else was cursed. However, just as the Death Gate members thought they would be safe by retreating, Baiyu, who had been walking down the main road, suddenly sped up. Although Baiyu only took one step forward, his entire body moved over 10 meters, and the speed of the curse symbols that were spreading into the city also suddenly increased. Immediately, some Death Gate members who hadn't been able to escape were cursed and died in despair and pain, shrinking the earth into an inch. Run! Seeing that Baiyu had sped up, the Death Gate members felt their eye sockets crack and started running towards the depths of the city. Shanghai, who was also in the midst of running, saw that all the Death Gate members were being chased by a single person. An infinite rage welled up in his chest, and he roared, "Stop running! We, the Death Gate members, are all skilled in curses. The city's curses were all engraved by us. How can we fear an outsider now? All of you get yourselves together and prepare to counterattack." Shanghai's roar had some effect. Some Death Gate members, not willing to be chased by Baiyu, stopped and wanted to join forces to resist the curses. After all, their enemy was just one person. If everyone contributed a little power, they could curse Baiyu to death and calm down the chaos of the city. However, before those courageous Death Gate members could form hand seals, the curse symbols that were spreading on the ground suddenly turned into venomous snakes, springing from the ground and biting the Death Gate members' necks. The curse symbols instantly spread all over their bodies. Ah! The piercing screams rose again. The other Death Gate members, seeing the fate of those who had stopped, were all terrified. Not daring to stop again, they ran madly to the depths of the city, fearing they would be targeted by the city's curses if they were too slow. The Death Gate members who were experts in curses all knew one thing. Death was not scary. What was scary was being targeted by a curse and living a life worse than death. Worthless. You're all a bunch of useless trash. Seeing that so many Death Gate members were scared to a rout by a single person, Shanghai couldn't help but yell. His face twisted. However, although he was yelling, he was running faster than anyone else, getting far away from the spreading curse symbols. Baiyu, who was strolling through the city, looked at the fleeing Death Gate members with a faint smile. His eyes fell on Shanghai, who was running at the front. That's the leader, right? Focusing on Shanghai, a flash of amusement flickered in Baiyu's eyes as he disappeared from his spot. The next moment, Baiyu teleported to in front of Shanghai. You! Seeing Baiyu appear in front of him, Shanghai's pupils constricted, and fear caused his legs to buckle. He slid and knelt directly before Baiyu. Chapter 244, Yuan. Why you? Shanghai knelt before Baiyu, his face full of terror as he looked at Baiyu, who was smiling. He wanted to stand up, but found that an inexplicable force was pressing down on his shoulders, making it impossible to move. And at this time, the city's curses continued to spread into the depths of the city. A large number of Death Gate members did not care about Shanghai's life or death and ran past him. Seeing the curse about to spread to his side, Shanghai looked at Baiyu in terror and asked, "What exactly do you want? Didn't you guys provoke me first? And now you are asking me what I want." Baiyu looked at Shanghai with a smile. "Did you think that sending a cursed cake as a warning was very cool?" You. Hearing Baiyu's words, Shanghai's pupils constricted as he immediately realized, "You are the one who wiped out the Church of Light? Looks like you are not too stupid." Seeing that Shanghai had reacted, Baiyu's eyes filled with amusement. "Since you already understand, then accept your fate of being exterminated." With that, Baiyu's spiritual sense enveloped Shanghai, intending to review his memories before killing him. Wait. A sense of impending doom rose in Shanghai's heart, and he hurriedly stopped Baiyu. "You can't kill me. I am the great protector of the Death Gate, and I have the sect leader's curse on me. If you kill me, you will be cursed by the sect leader. The sect leader, Yuan, is not like us trash. If you are cursed by him, you will have no place to be buried." "Oh, so, you're not the sect leader." Upon hearing Shanghai's words, Baiyu paused. Seeing that Shanghai could command the Death Gate members, and that his strength was the strongest among them, Baiyu had thought that Shanghai was someone of importance, but he was just a lackey. Seeing Bai Yu stop, Shanghai thought that his threat had worked, and he continued to threaten Bai Yu. I don't care who you are, but I want you to understand that our death gate is completely different from the Church of Light. You can destroy the Church of Light, but that doesn't mean you can come to our death gate and challenge us. As long as we want to. Bang! Before Shanghai could finish speaking, his head exploded, and his headless corpse fell to the ground. Since you aren't anyone important, then don't have so many lines. Bai Yu stopped looking at Shanghai's headless corpse and turned to the Death Gate members who had been terrified. Where is your sect leader? The sect leader is in seclusion in the very center of the city. A Death Gate member, unable to withstand Bai Yu's power, replied, trembling. Thank you. Bai Yu thanked the Death Gate member, then disappeared from his spot, heading to the very center of the city. Seeing Bai Yu disappear, the other Death Gate members thought that it was finally over, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. But before the Death Gate members could think about escaping, the cursed symbols in the city suddenly surged and, like a ferocious beast, devoured all the Death Gate members in an instant. Countless screams of pain echoed throughout the city. Bai Yu, with the background sounds of the Death Gate members' screams, reached the very center of the city. There was only a black, spired tower covered with cursed symbols. The entire tower was jet black, without any entrances. The cursed symbols on the tower's surface were like human veins, spreading to the ground and radiating in all directions. The curses of the entire city originated from here. It seems that this is the source of the city's curses. The person in here should have some connection to the forces outside of the primordial chaos. Bai Yu looked at the black tower at the center of the city before he could make a move to destroy it. A door automatically appeared on the tower, and a long-haired man dressed in black walked out slowly. You're the sect leader of the Death Gate? Bai Yu looked at the long-haired man and asked. My name is Yuan, the ruler of the Death Gate. Yuan looked at Bai Yu's eyes calmly, his black eyes full of death curses, making him look terrifying. I am aware that you have wreaked havoc in my city of the dead and killed countless of my disciples. Do you know what you have provoked? Your Death Gate disciples are the scum of the earth. I helped you get rid of this trash. You don't need to thank me. Bai Yu said with a smile, as if he couldn't understand Yuan's threats. It seems you don't understand. Oh well, you will understand soon enough. Yuan didn't show any emotions. He raised his hand slightly, and the city's curses came to life, surging towards the city's center, surrounding Bai Yu like ants. In the city of the dead, I am king. I am the curse. Yuan looked at Bai Yu calmly and said faintly, enjoy the last of your peace, because in the future, you will spend the rest of your life in endless pain and torment. Accept my curses. This is the price you must pay for provoking the Death Gate. As his words fell, Yuan manipulated the city's curses, intending to completely devour Bai Yu. However, when Yuan activated his power, the city's curses that surrounded Bai Yu remained motionless. A trace of doubt flashed in Yuan's eyes. He seemed to think something was wrong and tried again to activate the city's curses to devour Bai Yu. But the city's curses remained motionless, as if they were dead. Brother, are you all right? I'm almost asleep waiting. Bai Yu looked at Yuan with a smile and mocked. I didn't expect that you were also a curse master. I was careless. Yuan realized that it was all Bai Yu's doing, and his expression became serious. However, don't think you have won everything just because you controlled the city's curses. I'm not afraid to tell you that this city of the dead was just something I built out of a whim. The curses in this city are just some insignificant small tricks. The real power is still to come. Yuan became serious. A large number of curse symbols appeared on his skin, blood flowed from his eyes, combining with the black curse symbols, emitting an unsettling, ominous aura. As the curse symbols manifested, the city's curses gradually flowed towards Yuan's body. Yuan grinned at Bai Yu. See clearly. This is my real power. The strongest curse I have painstakingly researched. It can endlessly strengthen my body, and at the same time, absorb all the power of curses. In this city, I am invincible. Yuan roared. A large number of curse symbols spewed from his mouth, cursing everything in the world. Invader. suffered death. Under the curse's enhancement, Yuan crushed the ground and rushed towards Baiyu with great speed. But Baiyu merely caught Yuan's head easily and slammed it into the ground. Bang! A huge crater appeared in the ground, cracks spreading like spider webs. Yuan's face was pressed against the ground, his eyes full of disbelief. And no, impossible. Chapter 245. The Master Behind Yuan. With his head pressed down by Baiyu, Yuan's face was distorted. He tried his best to break free from Baiyu and stand up, but even with all his strength, Baiyu's palm remained unmoved. The immense difference in power made Yuan feel as if a Mount Tai was pressing down on him. Baiyu simply watched Yuan struggle beneath his palm, without a word, his spiritual sense forcefully surging into Yuan's soul. Ah! Yuan let out a painful scream, and a large amount of Yuan's memories flashed before Baiyu's eyes. Yuan cooperated with a man named Immortal. The reason why the Death Gate targeted Zhang Zixuan was also on Yuan's orders, but Baiyu read through Yuan's memories, his brows slightly furrowed. It wasn't that there was anything missing from Yuan's memories. On the contrary, Yuan's soul had not been modified in any way, and his memories were quite real and complete. What concerned Baiyu was that the man named Immortal had already cooperated with Yuan more than a decade ago, asking Yuan to continuously curse Zhang Zixuan. And at that time, the Holy Maiden of the Church of Light had not even adopted Zhang Zixuan yet. Yuan has been trying to curse Zhang Zixuan, and they even had the Church of Light kill the Holy Maiden, Zhang Zi, just to break down Zhang Zixuan's spirit, making her more vulnerable to curses. It seems that the Church of Light was just a pawn being used against Zhang Zixuan. What is so special about that girl that she has been targeted by these people for more than a decade? Baiyu murmured. Before, he thought that they had received the cursed cake from the Death Gate because he had destroyed the Church of Light, but judging from Yuan's memories, they were targeting Zhang Zixuan. What concerned Baiyu even more was that these people's focus on Zhang Zixuan seemed to be even more than on Ai Shuang, the key. That Immortal should be a being from outside the primordial chaos, yet he has been focusing on Zhang Zixuan all along. It seems that girl has secrets that I have not discovered. Could it be that she? Baiyu withdrew his spiritual sense. He seemed to have thought of something. His eyes narrowed slightly as he thought about Zhang Zixuan, and for a moment, he forgot about dealing with Yuan. Yuan seized the opportunity when Baiyu was distracted. He immediately abandoned his physical body and merged his soul with the city of the dead. The entire city began to shake violently. Countless death curses flew into the sky, weaving into a huge human face. Invader, you forced me to do this. Yuan, now the giant face in the sky, stared at Baiyu in the city and roared, "This is the forbidden power bestowed on me by that great one, containing supreme curses. I will return the humiliation I have suffered to you 1,000 times over." Yuan roared, and more death curses merged into the giant face in the sky. The entire Black City began to melt, and the ground softened, causing Baiyu to sink in. The huge commotion made by Yuan brought Baiyu back to his senses. He looked up at Yuan in the sky and muttered to himself. In Yuan's memories, he only recently received Immortal's order to keep an eye on Zhang Zixuan. Because of the long-term curses and the death of Zhang Zi, Zhang Zixuan's spirit has already weakened to the extreme. Yuan's curse is about to take effect. Immortal shouldn't just watch Yuan get killed and let their efforts of many years go to waste. This might be a good opportunity to draw out Immortal. Thinking this, Baiyu quietly removed the barrier around the Death Gate, allowing the outside world to sense the commotion that Yuan was creating in the city. At this time, Yuan was unaware of Baiyu's plans. After using the forbidden technique, he had completely lost control. His soul continuously absorbed the death curses of the city, and the giant face in the sky became more and more distorted, constantly emitting an ominous aura. The primeval forest surrounding the city began to wither in large swathes. If a satellite were to capture the area near the city at this moment, it would see that the primeval forest that had existed for countless years was vanishing at a visible rate. Yuan. From today onwards, I am the curse. Yuan, fused with the death curse, had never felt so powerful before. He was now addicted to the power of curses and began to seize all the life force around him, regardless of the consequences. The primeval forest could no longer satisfy his appetite. Yuan's death curse burst through the earth and spread out of the forest toward the city. This guy is really greedy. Seeing that Yuan had not even finished absorbing the energy of the primeval forest before he started targeting the city, Baiyu did not stand idly by anymore and began to act. The closest city was Nanchuan, and once Yuan's curse spread to the city, Zhang Zishuan and Ai Shuang would not be able to escape. Invader, it is too late for you to stop me. Yuan sensed the flow of spiritual power in Baiyu's body. He laughed loudly and looked at Baiyu, who was half submerged in the ground, with mockery. Now, I am the curse. I am an omnipotent god. You can no longer be my opponent. You talk too much nonsense. Baiyu didn't want to waste any more words with Yuan. He easily flew out of the softened ground and stood in midair, face to face with Yuan, who had transformed into a giant face. Without a word, Baiyu simply extended an index finger and tapped lightly in the void. Buzz! As if a finger had tapped the surface of calm water, space rippled. Wherever the ripples passed, the Black Death curses all dissipated. All the power that Yuan had absorbed was released at this moment. The death curses that spread towards the city disappeared, and the withered primeval forest regained its vitality. No, impossible. What did you do to me? Yuan felt that his power was rapidly draining away. Fear resurfaced in his eyes. He stared at Baiyu and roared, "Stop it!" Boom! An ominous aura soared into the sky, and countless curses transformed into pitch-black tentacles that flew out from the melting city of the dead and wrapped around Baiyu. Scatter! Baiyu lightly uttered a single word, his words seeming to contain endless divine power. The countless curses and dark tentacles that covered the city and sky vanished into thin air at this moment. Yuan, who had fused with the curses, returned to his soul form, standing dazedly in the sky. The methods displayed by Baiyu completely exceeded his imagination. Another outsider. At this time, Yuan realized that Baiyu was an important figure at the same level as that person. All the struggles he had made were like that of a clown. Come here. After purifying all the curses, Baiyu lifted a hand to pull Yuan's soul towards him. Yuan completely gave up resisting, letting himself be pulled away by Baiyu to face his death. However, just as Baiyu was about to grab Yuan, the corners of his lips curved slightly. He's here. Between Baiyu and Yuan, space suddenly cracked open, and a pale hand reached out and grabbed Yuan. Mr. Bai, I apologize. This person is an important tool of mine. He cannot die. A handsome young man with fair skin stepped out of the spatial rift. He looked calmly at Baiyu and said faintly, Chapter 246, The Skywalker. Baiyu looked at the young man who had stepped out of the spatial rift and asked, You must be Immortal? It seems that Mr. Bai already knows me from Yuan's memories. Then I won't introduce myself. Immortal smiled at Baiyu and casually created a puppet, stuffed Yuan's soul into it, and resurrected Yuan. You know me? Baiyu didn't seem surprised by Immortal's methods and raised an eyebrow in question. Immortal said, Initially, you were the immortal venerable Luo Yun in the Three Realms, then became the 8th king of the primordial chaos. Invited by the head of the 7 pillars, Tianji, you became Mr. Bai of the 7 pillars. You are one of the most noteworthy people in the primordial chaos. We Skywalkers know you much more than you can imagine. However, we thought that it would be Tianji coming to Blue Star, but it was you, Mr. Bai. This was a bit unexpected for us. Skywalker. Baiyu said the name out loud once. Is that the power behind you? Yes. Immortal nodded. Then why are you targeting the primordial chaos? You should also know that this place is occupied by our observers, that it is a land with an owner, right? Baiyu asked again. Immortal said, We Skywalkers have always been archenemies with the observers on the outside. The two sides have been fighting for countless years, with each side having wins and losses. Although the observers occupy the primordial chaos, we Skywalkers will not watch the brain enjoy such a fertile land and allow him to develop. Baiyu laughed. That's true. But now the primordial chaos has been turned into an iron bucket by us observers. You external forces have great difficulty even getting in, so how can you compete with us for territory? We naturally have a way, Jiang chuckled, as if the Skywalker's invasion of the primordial chaos was not a big problem in his eyes. It seems you are very confident. Baiyu knew what the Skywalkers would rely on to enter, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he asked, I'm curious. Your plans haven't even succeeded yet. Why are you so eager to reveal yourself to me? Aren't you afraid that I will ruin your plans? Baiyu was not just talking big. As one of the 7 pillars, and also the 8th king of the primordial chaos, he was already one of the strongest at the top of the pyramid in the primordial chaos. If he wanted to, he could easily stop the Skywalker's plans. Of course, we know that if you want to, Mr. Bai, you can easily block us out of the primordial chaos, but I still want to say, we know you far more than you can imagine. And it's precisely because we found out that it was you, Mr. Bai, who came to Blue Star that we came out to meet with you. Oh. Baiyu raised an eyebrow slightly. If you put it that way, I'm actually a little interested. How much do you know about me? Mr. Bai, as the 8th king of the primordial chaos, you're not sincerely working for the brain, are you? Jiang chuckled. It's just that your wife and daughters are in the hands of the brain. That's why you, as the ruler of the primordial chaos, had to betray the primordial chaos and work for the brain. Baiyu's gaze narrowed slightly, but he remained silent. Jiang continued, we Skywalkers are actually not interested in the primordial chaos at all. We just don't want the brain to develop comfortably here. So, we and you, Mr. Bai, have a foundation for cooperation. We can help you rescue your wife and daughters, and then we will deal with the brain together. After driving the brain out of the primordial chaos, we will return the primordial chaos to you. How does that sound? Sounds good. If my wife and daughters fell into your hands, what difference would it make compared to falling into the hands of the brain? Baiyu laughed coldly, not trusting Jiang's words at all. Mr. Bai, please trust us. We are not like the scheming the brain and Tianji, who would use your wife and daughters to threaten you. After we rescue your wife and daughters, we will send them to you completely unharmed. At that time, you can then consider whether to cooperate with us. How does that sound? You can talk about it when you've achieved it. Jiang laughed. Don't worry, we Skywalkers are very sincere. When we decided to interfere with the primordial chaos, we were already planning how to rescue your wife and daughters. Jiang chuckled. In fact, even if you didn't come to Blue Star, Mr. Bai, we would still rescue your wife and daughters and then talk to you about cooperation. At that time, even if you don't cooperate with us, we can form a friendly connection. After all, we all dislike the brain. As long as we harm the brain's interests, we Skywalkers are willing to do it. Baiyu's emotions did not fluctuate at all when he heard Jiang's words. Although Jiang's words sounded very pleasant, only he knew what was going on in his heart. And Baiyu had never thought of entrusting the rescue of his wife and daughters to anyone else. Baiyu didn't trust Jiang. He changed the topic and asked, helping me rescue my wife and daughters is just an empty promise. Don't try to paint me a pretty picture. What I'm more curious about now is why you would risk exposure to save a Blue Star native. Why? This should have been a secret of the Skywalkers and shouldn't be told to Mr. Bai, but since Mr. Bai has already read Yuan's memory, we can also show our sincerity by telling you about it. Mr. Bai, you should also know that Tianji once predicted that 2 figures that will threaten the observer's rule would appear in the primordial chaos, right? Baiyu's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't answer directly, and instead asked, what does this have to do with your cursing Zhang Zishuan? In fact, we also have great seers among our Skywalkers who have foreseen that the primordial chaos will be a place where wind and clouds gather in the future. A large number of influential figures will appear in this primordial chaos. Not only will they completely subvert the observers, but they will also completely change the situation outside. In our seers' predictions, besides the 2 figures that have not yet appeared, you, Mr. Bai, are also among these influential figures, and the name Zhang Zishuan also appeared in the seers' predictions. So, Zhang Zishuan will also be an influential figure who will subvert the observers? Baiyu tried to get more information. Not really. Jiang shook his head. The seers did not fully foresee the future. They only know that Zhang Zixuan will be an important figure affecting the primordial chaos. We are curious about her, so we have been observing her secretly, wanting to use her for our purposes. Now that Zhang Zixuan has become involved with you, Mr. Bai, I think her special nature should be related to you. Related to me? This is just a small guess of mine. Mr. Bai can take it as a joke. Imo Jiang smiled at Bai Yu. After all, my strength is weak, and I am not qualified to speculate on the predictions of great seers. Chapter 247. Emergency Situation. After listening to Imo Jiang's words, Bai Yu pondered for a moment, then smiled at Imo Jiang. Since Zhang Zixuan might be related to me, what was the point of your decade-long curse on her? This? Faced with Bai Yu's sudden question, Imo Jiang was momentarily speechless, not knowing how to answer. He couldn't very well say that they wanted to use Zhang Zixuan to influence Bai Yu, could he? Humph. It seems that your sincerity is not so high after all. Bai Yu sneered at Imo Jiang, and with a wave of his hand, he pulled Yuan back into his grasp. Mr. Bai. You. Imo Jiang's pupils constricted when he saw that Bai Yu had suddenly grabbed Yuan, and he exclaimed in shock. Bai Yu laughed. Imo Jiang, I don't care if you're a Skywalker or some other entity, you are far from qualified to negotiate terms with me. Bang. Without any hesitation, Bai Yu's powerful force invaded Yuan's newly acquired body. Before Yuan could even wake up, he exploded, completely dissipating his soul. Imo Jiang saw that Bai Yu had blasted Yuan into nothing. His body trembled violently, and an extremely powerful aura emanated from his body. The sky turned gloomy, and a gale sprang up. I'm not qualified? Imo Jiang looked at Bai Yu again, his lips growing fangs, his eyes turning scarlet. Bai Yu, you are just one of the 7 pillars of the primordial chaos. You have never even been outside. What makes you so arrogant? That we Skywalkers are willing to cooperate with you is us acknowledging you, giving you face. Otherwise, with just your status as a primordial chaos native, we could crush you with one finger. After Bai Yu killed Yuan, Imo Jiang fully exposed his true face, making no effort to hide his contempt for Bai Yu. Bai Yu, since you are unwilling to cooperate with us Skywalkers, then I will kill you here. Eliminating a capable 7-pillar under the brain is a great accomplishment. You talk too much nonsense. Bai Yu's voice echoed in Imo Jiang's ears, and then Imo Jiang saw a flash of swordlight. The nameless immeasurable sword was now floating beside Bai Yu, and on the blade, golden blood slowly dripped down. That is, when Imo Jiang saw the golden blood on the blade of the nameless immeasurable sword, his pupils constricted slightly. He subconsciously touched his neck and realized that his throat had been cut open, with a large amount of blood gushing out. Imo Jiang wanted to speak, but he realized his consciousness was becoming more and more blurred, and his soul was withering at an incredible speed. If the Skywalkers are all like you, then I suggest that you leave the primordial chaos as soon as possible. Coming here will only lead you to a faster death. Bai Yu looked calmly at Imo Jiang, who was covering his throat with his hands, his eyes indifferent, and lifted a hand slightly. Boom! The gigantic measuring ruler descended from the sky, directly pressing Imo Jiang into the ground, smashing him into a meat patty. Imo Jiang's soul didn't even have time to struggle before it was dissipated. On the other side of the spatial rift that Imo Jiang had come through, someone seemed to have detected Imo Jiang's death and immediately closed the spatial rift and disappeared. Bai Yu watched the spatial rift close, but he didn't chase after it. The Skywalkers were, after all, an organization that could contend with the observers. How many powerful individuals had infiltrated into the primordial chaos was still unknown. If Bai Yu rushed over rashly at this time, he might fall into a trap. If it was not necessary, Bai Yu did not want to put himself in danger. After dealing with Imo Jiang, Bai Yu began to recall what Imo Jiang had said and muttered. The Skywalker seer predicted that the primordial chaos will fall into chaos in the future, and the observers will be subverted. Could this be the work of good and evil? He had met good and evil, and had experienced their power. Without exaggeration, good and evil's strength was not below the brain. 2 such terrifying powerhouses had appeared silently in the primordial chaos, and were also plotting something big in the dark. The thought of it was terrifying. Fortunately, good and evil are not my enemies for the time being. Perhaps I can also use their schemes to achieve my goals. Baiyu was very clear that good and evil's target was the brain, and that his goal was to rescue his wife and daughters and escape the brain's control. In this regard, their goals were consistent, and they had a foundation for cooperation. The stronger good and evil were, the more advantageous it would be for him. Besides good and evil, Immortal also mentioned that the Skywalker Seers said that I will also be an influential figure in the future, but judging from Immortal's attitude towards me, that doesn't seem to be true. I can't fully believe what Immortal said. I must be careful and wary of the Skywalkers. Next, I need to find a way to contact the higher-ups of the Skywalkers to see if they are worth using. As Baiyu said this, he pondered for a while, and then he transmitted the information he had discovered about the Skywalkers to the observers guarding the outside of the Three Purities universe, asking the observers to transmit the information back to headquarters. However, Baiyu still concealed the information about AI Shuang and Zhang Zixuan. He had now met the Skywalkers and had even killed one of their members. If he continued to hide the existence of the Skywalkers, once the brain learned through other channels that the Skywalkers had invaded the primordial chaos, then he and his wife and daughters would be in danger. What's more, the Skywalkers' initial target was Tianji, and then Tianji suddenly asked Baiyu to go to the Three Purities universe. This made it hard for Baiyu not to think that this might be a test from Tianji. As for using the Skywalkers to deal with the brain, Baiyu did not believe that the Skywalkers had only opened up one loophole in the primordial chaos in the Three Purities universe. If the Skywalkers were really that stupid, without any other backup plans, then, for Baiyu, the Skywalkers would not be worth anything. After reporting the information he had discovered on Blue Star to headquarters, Baiyu proceeded to completely bury the city of the dead, clear away all the curses, and return to Nanchuan City. Zhang Zixuan and AI Shuang were still in the private room, without having gone anywhere, and the diners in the restaurant were now huddled in the restaurant, not daring to step out the door. When Baiyu returned and saw that those diners had not left, he didn't say anything. Those people would soon realize that the curse had worn off and would naturally run away. Baiyu went directly into the private room and saw that Zhang Zixuan had already fainted on the ground, while AI Shuang was standing anxiously by her side, at a loss as to what to do. "Mr. Bai, you're finally back." Seeing Baiyu return, AI Shuang was as if she had seen a savior, and she quickly said, "Come look at Zixuan. Her breathing is getting weaker." Seeing Zhang Zixuan's condition, Baiyu's pupils constricted slightly, and he immediately stepped forward to check Zhang Zixuan's body, while at the same time asking AI Shuang, what happened to her. AI Shuang said quickly, "Shortly after you left, Mr. Bai, she became like this. I can't reach you, and I didn't dare to leave. I was so worried." "Don't worry, let me take a look." Baiyu comforted AI Shuang and enveloped Zhang Zixuan's body with his spiritual sense. However, the moment Baiyu's spiritual sense touched Zhang Zixuan's soul, he suddenly felt a powerful suction from Zhang Zixuan's soul, directly sucking his soul power in. Chapter 248, Good and Evil's Request. This is, feeling the powerful suction that suddenly came from Zhang Zixuan's soul, Baiyu's expression changed drastically, and he subconsciously wanted to withdraw his soul, but the suction force from Zhang Zixuan's soul became stronger and stronger. The next moment, a large number of runes surged out from Zhang Zixuan's soul, attaching themselves to Baiyu's soul power. Baiyu was no longer able to resist and felt a whirl of dizziness. His entire consciousness arrived in a strange space. Here, there was a vast expanse of white, with nothing else. Baiyu could not sense anything besides himself. What happened? Baiyu stood in this white space and shook his dizzy head, still a little confused about the situation. The sudden pull had consumed a large amount of his soul power, and his head was throbbing with pain at this moment. "Mr. Bai, I'm very sorry to meet you in this way." At this moment, a female voice came, and when Baiyu heard the voice, he saw a mature and steady woman appear in this space. Zhang Zixuan? When Baiyu saw this mature and steady woman, he instinctively called out her name. Although this woman was somewhat different from the young girl Zhang Zixuan, and her temperament was also completely different, Baiyu still recognized her at a glance. She was Zhang Zixuan. "It's me." Zhang Zixuan smiled at Baiyu. "That girl on Blue Star was a wisp of my soul. I have been waiting for you on Blue Star. You have been waiting for me? Bai Yu's brows furrowed slightly. Who exactly are you? It seems that we didn't know each other at all before, did we? Mr. Bai, you may not know me, but you must know my brother. Zhang Zishuan laughed lightly. Your brother? His name is Initial Goodness. When Zhang Zishuan mentioned the name Initial Goodness, Bai Yu instantly reacted and exclaimed, You are his sister? Yes. Zhang Zishuan nodded slightly. Originally, after my brother met with you last time, we shouldn't have disturbed you again. But now they have encountered some trouble and need your help, so I waited for you on Blue Star beforehand. How did you know I would come to Blue Star? Bai Yu asked again. Tianji temporarily asked me to help, right? We have long known that the Skywalkers were setting up a plan in the primordial chaos, and also that they have been secretly planning to deal with the observers. Zhang Zishuan laughed. However, with the strength of the Skywalkers, they cannot threaten the brain at all. The brain has long been aware that the Skywalkers have invaded the primordial chaos. Upon hearing Zhang Zishuan's words, Bai Yu's pupils constricted sharply. As expected, this was indeed the brain testing him. Zhang Zishuan continued, Although you, Mr. Bai, have become one of the 7 pillars, you were, after all, chosen by the primordial chaos to be the 8th king, and you represent the interests of the primordial chaos. The brain cannot possibly trust you at all, so the brain will definitely send you to Blue Star to test your loyalty to it. And as long as we know this, setting up a plan on Blue Star ahead of time, then, after you come, Mr. Bai, it would not be so abrupt for me to contact you. Bai Yu nodded slightly. No wonder. As soon as I arrived at Blue Star, my subordinates detected a special signal from you. So, it was you who intentionally pushed this. The Skywalkers and the observers. You've all been played like a fiddle. Ha ha ha. You flatter me, Mr. Bai. These were all arranged by good and evil. I was just following the plan. Zhang Zishuan said with a smile. Let's get down to business. You spent so many years planning to meet me. What trouble have you encountered? Zhang Zishuan said, Currently, good and evil are searching for the Emperor Ancestor in the 3,000 universes. However, they have encountered some problems, and they have been unable to find him. Instead, they have caused quite a commotion. Now, good and evil are almost being targeted by the brain. The Emperor Ancestor? Bai Yu raised his eyebrows slightly. What is that? To put it simply, you can understand him as a novel protagonist, Mr. Bai. All hope for breaking the stalemate depends on the Emperor Ancestor. A novel protagonist. Your description is quite novel. Bai Yu smiled at Zhang Zishuan. He did not ask too much about the details of the Emperor Ancestor, but instead asked, Tell me, what help do you need from me? To be honest, Bai Yu had a good impression of good and evil. After all, the reason why he was able to hide his true intentions from the brain and slowly make his plans in the dark was all due to the help of good and evil. Bai Yu now owed good and evil a huge favor, and now was a good opportunity to repay it. Mr. Bai, good and evil want you to intensify the conflict between the Skywalkers and the observers to make them go to war ahead of schedule, and it would be best if you could attract the brain's attention away from the primordial chaos. Is that it? Bai Yu was surprised after hearing Zhang Zishuan's request. It was not because good and evil's request was too harsh, but that it was completely unnecessary. Even without Zhang Zishuan's request, Bai Yu himself would find a way to intensify the conflict between the Skywalkers and the observers and make them go to war. If that was all they needed, there was no need for good and evil to plan for so many years just to notify him. Zhang Zishuan smiled. Good and evil have always been like this. They believe that the foundation for cooperation is a win-win situation. When you accomplish your own plans, our goals will also be achieved. A worthwhile approach to learn from? Bai Yu smiled at Zhang Zishuan and asked, Besides that, do you really not have anything else you need my help with? It doesn't seem very worthwhile to expend so much effort to pull my consciousness into this strange space just to say this. Indeed, there is one more thing. Zhang Zishuan said, However, it's not that we want your help, Mr. Bai, but that we want to remind you. Remind me? Yes. Zhang Zishuan nodded. Your daughter, Mr. Bai, has also been chosen by the primordial chaos, and it's likely that it won't be long before she becomes the incarnation of the will of the primordial chaos. Become the incarnation of the will of the primordial chaos. Bayu's brows furrowed slightly. What will happen to her? You don't have to worry too much, Mr. Bai. You are the 8th king of the primordial chaos, and you represent the interests of the primordial chaos. The will of the primordial chaos will not harm your daughter. After she becomes the incarnation of the will of the primordial chaos, not only will she gain immense power and become an immortal being, she will also be able to maintain her own will. However, the brain has been suppressing the will of the primordial chaos. If your daughter becomes the incarnation of the will of the primordial chaos, the brain will definitely target your daughter. Target little Ya. Upon hearing Zhang Zixuan's words, Bayu took a deep breath, then thanked Zhang Zixuan. Thank you for reminding me. No need to thank me. Zhang Zixuan smiled. Also, I suggest you do not stop your daughter from becoming the incarnation of the will of the primordial chaos. Why? Bayu frowned. He could not possibly stand by and watch his daughter be suppressed by the brain. Because if she does not become the incarnation of the will of the primordial chaos in the near future, she will die. Chapter 249. The Brain's Command. Little Ya is going to die? Hearing Zhang Zixuan's words, Bayu, usually so calm, changed his expression and tone, immediately asking, who wants to kill her? However, after saying that, Zhang Zixuan vanished into thin air, and Bayu's consciousness broke free from that blank, white space, returning to the private room in the restaurant. Mr. Bai, please look at Zixuan. At this moment, AI Shuang's cries snapped Bayu back to his senses. Bayu immediately looked at Zhang Zixuan. He saw her figure rapidly becoming translucent, her presence fading quickly. Mr. Bai, what's wrong with her? Is she going to be okay? AI Shuang panicked at the sight of Zhang Zixuan's body becoming ethereal, her face filled with anxiety. She couldn't understand what was happening. She's fine. She's just gone to another place. Seeing Zhang Zixuan in this state, Bayu knew that she had retrieved her divided spirit. It was likely that Zhang Zixuan on Blue Star would completely disappear soon. Zhang Zixuan's disappearance was normal. After all, the brain had eyes everywhere in the primordial chaos. If she remained on Blue Star, she could be exposed at any time. Leaving after delivering the message was the best course of action. No one would care where a homeless young girl had gone. Bayu wasn't concerned about where Zhang Zixuan went. His mind was filled with thoughts of little Ya. Since he had become a 7-pillar, time in the 3 realms had stopped. So far, Bai Xiaoya was still just an ordinary high school student. She hadn't experienced anything. For Bai Xiaoya to become the embodiment of the primordial chaos's will and be seen as a major enemy by the brain, it was all too much. However, Zhang Zixuan's warning forced Bayu to be careful. Who would kill Bai Xiaoya? While Bayu frowned and pondered, Zhang Zixuan's body became increasingly ethereal, finally vanishing completely. Mr. Bai, Zixuan disappeared. AI Shuang, having witnessed Zhang Zixuan's disappearance, was deeply shaken, her voice filled with sobs. She couldn't understand what had happened to Zhang Zixuan. She even thought Zhang Zixuan was dead. But after thinking about Bai Xiaoya, Bayu gradually calmed down, beginning to think rationally. Currently, the 3 realms were still under the brain's control. He was on a mission and couldn't return. Moreover, frequently meeting with his wife and daughter would only intensify the brain's suspicion. It wouldn't benefit anyone. Worrying now is useless. It will only disrupt my plans. According to Zhang Zixuan, as long as little Ya becomes the embodiment of the primordial chaos's will, she won't be in danger. In the current situation, it's unrealistic to expect little Ya to grow up carefree. Perhaps it's time for her to grow quickly, to face the dangers head-on. After calming down, Bayu accepted the possibility that Bai Xiaoya might become the embodiment of the primordial chaos's will. He began to change his plans. If Bai Xiaoya became the embodiment of the primordial chaos's will, Bayu wouldn't be surprised if her power surpassed even the 7 pillars. In that case, Bai Xiaoya would also become a valuable asset. If used well, she might play a significant role in countering the brain's schemes. Mr. Bai. AI Shuang noticed that after Zhang Zixuan disappeared, the expression on Bai Yu's face had become unpredictable. Feeling increasingly uneasy, she kept softly calling out to him, wanting him to return to normal, but also afraid of disturbing him. Hearing AI Shuang's timid calls, Bai Yu realized he had a frightened young girl beside him. Snapping back to reality, he immediately said to AI Shuang, "I'm sorry. A lot happened just now. My mind was a bit chaotic. I didn't take care of you. Don't worry about Zixuan. She has many secrets, and some bad people are watching her. She's hidden herself somewhere else." Bai Yu patiently explained, trying to reassure her. Although his personality had become a bit colder after becoming a seven-pillar, he was not heartless. AI Shuang was someone he had brought back from the heavenly Tao for his own purposes. He naturally needed to be responsible for her. "Mr. Bai, are you really not lying to me?" AI Shuang asked, looking into Bai Yu's eyes. Although she didn't understand a lot, she wasn't stupid. Bai Yu's expression had been terrifying, and coupled with Zhang Zixuan's disappearance, it was easy for someone to imagine something bad had happened. Seeing AI Shuang's gaze, Bai Yu realized she had misunderstood. He shook his head and smiled, concealing some important secrets, and explained to AI Shuang that Zhang Zixuan was a divided spirit of a powerful being. After Bai Yu's painstaking reassurance, AI Shuang finally calmed down and accepted the fact that Zhang Zixuan had left Blue Star. "Mr. Bai, what should we do next?" AI Shuang asked. "Do we still need to find a place to live?" "There's no need. From now on, you will stay by my side." Bai Yu shook his head slightly. Initially, he wanted to find a place to live because Zhang Zixuan was a Blue Star native and needed to live there. Having a place to stay could give Zhang Zixuan a sense of stability. But now, Zhang Zixuan had left. Neither he nor AI Shuang were natives of Blue Star and wouldn't stay on this planet for long. There was no need to find a residence here. Moreover, AI Shuang was basically a blank slate, knowing nothing about the world. Leaving her alone would likely cause problems. It was better for her to directly reside in his small world. This way, he could protect AI Shuang from Skywalkers and keep a trump card in his hand. AI Shuang was the key for Skywalkers to enter the primordial chaos. In the near future, AI Shuang would undoubtedly play a significant role. Okay. AI Shuang was also unfamiliar with this world and only had Bai Yu to rely on. She was also very obedient. At this moment, the Overseer suddenly transmitted a message to Bai Yu. "Mr. Bai." Hearing the Overseer's transmission, Bai Yu didn't reply immediately. He opened his small world and took AI Shuang inside before responding. "What is it?" "The brain has given an order. It wants us to destroy the three pure cosmos, cutting off the Skywalker's channel to invade the primordial chaos. We are ready on the outside. When will you come out?" "Destroy the three pure cosmos?" Hearing the Overseer's words, Bai Yu frowned. "Are you sure this is the brain's order?" "Yes. After you reported the Skywalker situation, the brain gave the order." The Overseer responded respectfully, not daring to hide anything from Bai Yu. "You are to hold your positions for now. I will first seek instructions from the brain." "But..." "No buts. Follow my orders. You are not allowed to act rashly before I return." Bai Yu's voice suddenly became stern. The Overseer who had transmitted the message trembled and quickly replied, "Understood." Although the brain was the supreme leader of the Overseer organization, Bai Yu was their direct superior, and he could decide their fate. Therefore, these Overseers dared not disobey Bai Yu's orders. After giving the orders to the Overseer, Bai Yu did not stay on Blue Star. He teleported directly back to the headquarters. Chapter 250. The Approaching Crisis. The Overseer headquarters, the location of the brain, a black tower entwined with thick lines. Bai Yu, who had put his mask back on, arrived outside the black tower. Before he could enter, the brain's voice came from inside. "Bai Yu, why are you back?" Bai Yu immediately knelt on one knee outside the tower, saying, "I heard from my subordinates that you ordered me to destroy the three pure cosmos, so I wanted to come back and confirm." "That's right, that was my order." The brain replied calmly, "Since you discovered those Skywalker rats in the three pure cosmos, it means that they have found a way to enter the primordial chaos from there. The primordial chaos is our important rear base. It concerns the rise and fall of our organization. We cannot let those rats infiltrate. Destroying the three pure cosmos will cut off their path in, and then I will be at ease. Hearing the brain's words, Baiyu immediately said, I dare to request that the brain rescind the order to destroy the three pure cosmos. Rescind the order to destroy the three pure cosmos? The brain's tone noticeably increased, with a hint of threat. Do you know what you are saying? You are questioning me. Baiyu remained unfazed by the brain's threat. While fabricating his superficial memories, he said, I have had contact with the members of the Skywalkers. Some of them are impersonating the Heavenly Oracle and are active in the three pure cosmos. Moreover, they are very familiar with the seven pillars and are not worried that I have discovered their existence. Therefore, I believe that the three pure cosmos is just a smokescreen set up by the Skywalkers. Their path to invade the primordial chaos is somewhere else in the primordial chaos. What you said makes sense. After hearing Baiyu's analysis, the brain's tone softened, although it was still cold. It continued to ask Baiyu, so, what do you plan to do? I believe that I should continue to investigate the three pure cosmos, while the other seven pillars should search other universes for traces of the Skywalkers. Also, I think we should conduct a self-check. Perhaps there are traitors within our organization as well? You mean, we have traitors on our side? What evidence do you have? No evidence, but it is a plausible guess, Baiyu said calmly. The Skywalkers know a lot about us. They know many secrets that even the overseers are not authorized to know. This situation, unless a seven pillar is in league with them, I can't imagine any other possibility. You're saying that a seven pillar betrayed me? The brain's voice suddenly turned incredibly cold. Are you questioning my abilities? The brain could review the memories of the seven pillars at any time. It could be said that for the brain, the seven pillars had no secrets. This was also the fundamental reason why the brain could let Baiyu be a seven pillar with peace of mind. If Baiyu harbored any disloyal thoughts, it could easily deal with him. I am not questioning your abilities, but sometimes a seven pillar may not even realize that they have betrayed the organization, inadvertently assisting the enemy. After all, the other side is the Skywalkers, and they can impersonate the Heavenly Oracle. Their methods are exceptionally strange. It's not impossible that they found a way to deceive a seven pillar. Humph. Baiyu's words seemed to remind the brain of something. It snorted coldly, then said, although what you're saying is absurd, it's not entirely unreasonable. I understand. Baiyu, seeing that he had successfully planted a seed of suspicion about the seven pillars in the brain's heart, curled his lips into a subtle smile. Then he asked the brain, in that case, about the three pure cosmos. Although your proposal is useful, the threat of the Skywalkers cannot be ignored. I can give you 1 month. Go investigate the Skywalkers' plot in the three pure cosmos and their possible entry points in the primordial chaos. If you fail to find all the Skywalkers' pathways to invade the primordial chaos within 1 month, then we will directly destroy the three pure cosmos to eliminate future problems. Yes. Baiyu replied respectfully, knowing that getting 1 month's time for the three pure cosmos was already the limit. 1 month later, if the Skywalkers were still in the primordial chaos, the three pure cosmos, including all the living beings inside the universe, would be destroyed. Although the destruction of the universe was a catastrophe for the living beings in the three pure cosmos, for the overseers, the three pure cosmos was just one universe in the primordial chaos, equivalent to a grain of sand in the desert or a drop of water in the ocean. Among the entire overseer organization, only Baiyu, a person from the three realms, cared about the life and death of the universe's living beings. After the brain gave Baiyu the new orders, seeing that Baiyu still hadn't left, it asked, is there anything else? Baiyu originally wanted to ask the brain about his wife and daughter, but after thinking of Zhang Zishuan's warning, he finally calmed down and said, no, I was just wondering how the Skywalkers managed to infiltrate our organization. The brain replied indifferently, I have a plan for this, you don't need to worry about it. Go investigate the three pure cosmos. Although the Skywalkers are just clowns, some of them are troublesome. If those guys enter the primordial chaos, they will also be a big problem. If you encounter any issues or problems, Report them to me immediately. Understood. Bai Yu replied and then disappeared from the spot, returning to the three pure cosmos. Shortly after Bai Yu left, the heavenly oracle came out of the black tower. The brain asked the heavenly oracle, "Heavenly oracle, did you see any problems with him?" The heavenly oracle shook his head slightly, saying, "Since he told us about the Skywalkers, it shows that he is still loyal to the organization. As for some of his minor schemes, I think it's still about his wife and daughter. They are harmless." The brain then asked, "What do you think about his saying that there are traitors among the 7 pillars? I will investigate that. No matter who it is, I won't show any mercy." Very good. Also, I recently sensed that the primordial chaoses has begun to stir. It should be choosing a new embodiment. Pay attention to Bai Yu's daughter. Bai Yu is the 8th primordial king. His daughter is most likely to be favored by the primordial chaos's will. Once she shows signs of becoming the embodiment of the primordial chaos's will, kill her immediately. But if that happens, won't Bai Yu? The heavenly oracle hesitated. He's just the 8th king. Compared to the threat of the primordial chaos's will, there is no big difference between him and the 7 primordial kings. Hearing the brain's words, the heavenly oracle sighed heavily and replied, "Understood." Chapter 251, A Deadly Game. Outside of Blue Star, in the 3 pure cosmos, Bai Yu stood in space, looking at the planet in front of him, which was remarkably similar to Earth, his expressions somewhat complicated. "Mr. Bai." A pair of gigantic, dark eyes opened behind Bai Yu, asking him respectfully, "Do we still need to destroy the 3 pure cosmos?" "Pass on the order. Hold your positions for now. No one is to move without my command."
"Yes."
The overseer dared not disobey Bai Yu's orders. It responded respectfully, then retreated outside the 3 pure cosmos, continuing to blockade the universe with the other overseers. After the overseer left, Bai Yu looked back at Blue Star, sighing slightly, "Alas, whether you can survive the upcoming tribulation depends on fate." Bai Yu didn't want Blue Star to perish, but at this point, he could only do his best and leave the rest to fate. The 1 month he secured for Blue Star was already the limit. Enough, too much thought is useless. I should focus on my own matters first. Bai Yu shook his head, pushed aside his complex thoughts, re-entered Blue Star, and returned to South River City. South River City was still as peaceful as ever. The darkness that lurked beneath the surface was completely masked by the city's facade of light. An entire residential area was slaughtered by demons, and everyone in a restaurant was cursed. Yet, this city remains calm and tranquil. It's truly bizarre. I wonder who's whitewashing the truth behind the scenes. Bai Yu stood on the rooftop of a skyscraper, looking at the prosperous city below, instinctively sighing. Perhaps, even without the overseer's intervention, based on South River City's current state, Blue Star would soon destroy itself. As Bai Yu was lamenting, the space behind him slightly distorted, and a dark shadow emerged. Bai Yu turned to look at the shadow. Before he could speak, the shadow suddenly unfolded a barrier that instantly enveloped the entire South River City. The sky over South River City turned pitch black, as if the entire city had been swallowed by a ferocious beast named Darkness. Instantly, fear spread among the people in the city. "Mr. Bai." The shadow gradually turned into a human form and introduced itself to Bai Yu. "Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Yuing, a member of the Skywalkers, specializing in barrier sealing and concealment. Mr. Bai, you killed Emojiang, causing a huge loss to the Skywalkers, so the organization sent me to meet you." "Just you?" Bai Yu sized up Yuing, raising an eyebrow. "How do you plan to fight me?" Although Yuing was somewhat strange, his own strength wasn't that great. Even if Bai Yu didn't personally make a move, having one of his overseer subordinates come over would easily subdue Yuing. "Haha, Mr. Bai, you don't have to look at me with such skepticism," Yuing chuckled at Bai Yu. "My frontal combat ability is indeed not strong, so I don't plan on fighting Mr. Bai head-on. Mr. Bai, I would like to play a game of hide and seek with you." At this, Yuing laughed wickedly. "The time limit is 10 minutes. If Mr. Bai cannot catch me within 10 minutes, something terrible might happen." "Mystifying." Bai Yu snorted, casually throwing out a spirit blade. Yuying nimbly dodged Bayu's attack, then scattered in all directions, merging with South River City. Haha, Mr. Bai, the game has begun. Come and find me. Yuying's laughter echoed in the sky above the city. After hearing Yuying's voice, the people of South River City all became listless, their faces covered with a layer of black mist. This guy. Bayu sensed that Yuying's aura was evenly distributed on every person in the entire South River City. He frowned slightly. Is he trying to threaten me with the lives of the city's people? No. Bayu quickly shook his head. The Skywalkers know I am a seven pillar. Using a city to threaten me is meaningless. This Yuying must have other purposes. Bayu dismissed his conjecture. However, he did not intend to think about what Yuying intended to do. He flew up to try to exit the barrier. From the beginning, he had no intention of playing this boring game with Yuying. No matter what Yuying was scheming, as long as Bayu didn't follow his pace, he wouldn't be fooled. Mr. Bai, if you can't catch me, your daughter will be in danger. Just as Bayu was about to leave the barrier, Yuying's voice rang out again. A giant image then appeared in the city. In the image, Bai Xiaoya was lying unconscious in a metal room without doors. In the center of the city, a broken karma fire lotus also appeared. That was the divine artifact that Bayu had given to Bai Xiaoya for protection. Xiaoya? Karma fire lotus? Seeing the image and the broken karma fire lotus, Bayu's pupils contracted violently. He suddenly unleashed an extremely terrifying aura that swept across the entire city. What have you done to her? Oh my! An angry Mr. Bai is truly scary. Yuying smiled at Bayu. Didn't we say? We intended to help Mr. Bai rescue your wife and daughter, and we have already taken action. Unfortunately, Mr. Bai, you didn't trust our ability and even killed one of our important members, so as a last resort, we had no choice but to imprison your daughter. If you dare to harm even a single hair on her head, I, Bayu, swear to slaughter all of you Skywalkers. Bayu roared, the murderous intent erupting from his body, threatening to engulf the entire city. He never imagined that while the three realms were sealed in the Overseer's headquarters, the Skywalkers were still able to abduct Bai Xiaoya from the three realms. If it wasn't because the brain was too useless, then it could only be that the brain deliberately allowed the Skywalkers to take Bai Xiaoya. At that moment, Bayu understood the brain's intentions. It was likely that the brain had long known that the Skywalkers would secretly try to win over him, the eighth primordial king, and that he would turn a blind eye to the Skywalkers' activities. Therefore, the brain allowed the Skywalkers to abduct Bai Xiaoya, directly escalating the conflict between him and the Skywalkers and pushing them into confrontation. What a clever plan to set a wolf against a tiger. Having figured this out, Bayu realized that he had underestimated the brain. Although the brain was usually arrogant and self-centered, it was perhaps more meticulous than anyone else. It was likely that the brain had always suspected that it hadn't really read Bayu's true thoughts. While Bayu was pondering these things, Yuying continued to laugh. Don't worry, Mr. Bai, your daughter is currently safe. As long as you win this game, your daughter will always be safe. Of course, if you lose this game, it proves that you are of no value to us Skywalkers, and then your daughter will also have no reason to remain. Mr. Bai, good luck. Ha! Yuying's laughter echoed across the city. The image of Bai Xiaoya disappeared, leaving only the broken karma fire lotus lying alone in the center of the city. Chapter 252. Unreasonable. As Yuying's laughter faded, the entire city became completely quiet, deathly still. Everyone in the city was covered in black mist, all tainted with Yuying's aura. Each person seemed to be Yuying, and yet it also seemed like none of them were. Bayu stood silently in the high sky, picking up the karma fire lotus in the center of the city. Thank you for your hard work, old friend. Bayu muttered softly, taking the broken karma fire lotus into his body and nurturing it with his own spiritual power. After retrieving the karma fire lotus, Bayu landed back in the city, his gaze sweeping across the citizens. The instant Bayu landed in the city, everyone around him turned to look at Bayu, their eyes pitch black, the black mist on their faces making their expressions extremely sinister. Upon closer inspection, The entire city had become incredibly terrifying due to the appearance of the black mist. Baiyu, unfazed by the scene before him, scanned the area. He walked up to a person enveloped in black mist and absorbed the black mist from his face into his palm. The instant Baiyu absorbed the black mist, the person immediately collapsed to the ground, turning into black ash. The black mist in Baiyu's palm was ordinary, nothing special. These people are all dead. Baiyu's eyes narrowed as he looked at the ashes on the ground. He actually absorbed the souls of the entire city for a game of hide-and-seek. Baiyu released the black mist in his hand, allowing it to spread in the air. Then, he looked up at the sky again, where a huge timer was displayed. At that moment, Baiyu only had 7 minutes left. However, Baiyu wasn't in a hurry. He remained where he was, analyzing the situation. Since Ewing said this is a game of hide-and-seek, then the rules of hide-and-seek apply. I'm the seeker, and I have to catch Ewing hiding in the city. It seems that Ewing is attached to a certain person in this city, but the truth shouldn't be so simple. Baiyu spoke to himself, then spread his power throughout the entire city, dispelling all the black mist that enveloped the faces of the city's residents. In an instant, everyone in the city turned into black ash. The black mist also permeated the air, dispersing evenly throughout the city. South River City had become a ghost town. At this point, besides Baiyu, there wasn't a single living person in the city. Indeed, Ewing absorbing everyone's souls was just a decoy. Baiyu wasn't surprised at the current situation. He once again released his power, instantly leveling the entire city. Now that the city was a ghost town, there was naturally no point in keeping the city. In less than a minute, the huge, modern city was directly raised to a bare plain by Baiyu. Endless black mist enveloped the desolate ground, and Baiyu, standing on the plain, was gradually swallowed by the black mist. Baiyu allowed the black mist to engulf him, calmly saying, "Not on people, not hidden in buildings." Then, within this barrier, the only place where you could be hiding, Ewing, is in this black mist. Hee. Mr. Bai, your approach to the game is truly crude. We were supposed to play hide-and-seek in the city, but you directly leveled the entire city right away. That's really unreasonable. Yu Ying's voice came from within the black mist, but from his tone, he did not seem anxious. But even if you level this city, what's the use? To win this game, you must catch me. Just knowing that I'm hidden in the black mist doesn't mean you will win. Hearing Yu Ying's words, the corners of Baiyu's lips slightly curled up as he laughed. It seems that you admit it yourself, that you're hidden in the black mist. Ewing was stunned, then said, "It's easy to guess that I'm hidden in the black mist. It's like fish in water, birds in the sky. The key is how you can find me. That's the point of the game. Why do I have to find you?" Baiyu chuckled, suddenly igniting karma fire in his palm. Seeing the karma fire ignite in Baiyu's palm, a bad premonition arose in Yu Ying's heart, and he cried out in alarm, What are you doing? If you were hidden in a person in the city, it might have been a bit difficult for me. After all, I don't like killing innocent people. To find you in 10 minutes among tens of millions of people, it would have been quite challenging. But you were so clever as to evacuate the souls of the city's residents, leaving only their shells. For me, there is no psychological burden in finding you. Chi. As Baiyu finished speaking, the karma fire in his palm suddenly grew larger, directly igniting the black mist. The fire quickly spread in all directions. Baiyu, you're cheating." Seeing that Baiyu could directly ignite his black mist, Yu Ying yelled out. He was flustered. Things weren't supposed to be like this. The reason why he used the hide-and-seek game was to test where Baiyu's soul power reached its limit under extreme pressure. Actually, the normal way for Baiyu to win this game was to completely release his soul power, carefully examine each cloud of black mist, then find subtle differences in the black mist and thus locate Yu Ying. Besides Yu Ying, the Skywalkers had prepared several more games for Baiyu. Reaction speed, agility, strength. The Skywalkers had custom-made tests for Baiyu in all these areas, but Baiyu didn't cooperate at all. In the first game, he didn't even use his soul power. He simply used fire to burn everything. As the karma fire ignited more and more of the black mist, The bright flames illuminated the dark sky. Ewing knew that he would be exposed soon. Helplessly, Ewing had to send a voice transmission to his boss behind him. Boss, Baiyu is playing by his own rules. If I'm touched by that karma fire, I'm afraid I'll end up like Emojiang. What should I do now? This time, we didn't consider everything carefully enough, and Baiyu found a loophole in the rules. Just concede. As Ewing finished the transmission, a strange voice sounded in his mind, telling him to concede. Yes. Having received permission from the figure behind him, Ewing breathed a sigh of relief. He immediately retrieved the black mist that had not been ignited by Baiyu, revealed his true form, and surrendered to Baiyu. You win. I concede this game. When Baiyu saw Ewing reveal his true form, he retracted the karma fire. He then asked Ewing, where is Xiaoya? Don't be impatient. Besides me, we have a few more brothers who want to play games with you. As long as you... I'm asking you, where is Xiaoya? Baiyu instantly appeared in front of Ewing. Before he could finish speaking, Baiyu grabbed his neck and asked coldly. Feeling Baiyu's icy killing intent, Ewing trembled all over and quickly said, You already killed Emojiang. If you kill me as well, your relationship with the Skywalkers will become irreconcilable and your daughter will definitely die. Baiyu, you better do as we say. Baiyu wouldn't be swayed. He glared coldly at Ewing, saying, I'll count down from 3. If you don't tell me where my daughter is, I will kill you. 3. Wait. Ewing cried out, almost bursting into tears. The script, how is this different from what was agreed on? Chapter 253, Reshaping the City. Even though Ewing called for a stop, Baiyu continued to hold Ewing's neck, continuing to count down, 2. Seeing that Baiyu had no intention of giving him a chance to breathe, Ewing panicked and quickly said, Your daughter is hidden by us on Blue Star, within a special barrier. Ewing was about to go crazy. He was ordered to test Baiyu's abilities, not to fight to the death. He brought up Xiaoya to stimulate Baiyu, in order to push Baiyu to his limits. But he never expected Baiyu to be such a madman, not considering the consequences at all. For the Skywalkers, both Emojiang and Ewing were just pawns that could be discarded at any time. They were not important. And Baiyu, he was both a 7th pillar of the Overseers and the 8th king of the primordial chaos. In addition, Baiyu had appeared in the Prophet's prophecies. His identity was extremely special. Therefore, even if Baiyu killed Ewing, the Skywalkers would not necessarily turn against Baiyu. Instead, they would choose to cooperate with him further. Ewing was very clear about this, so he understood that if he died, it would be a pointless death. Xiaoya is on Blue Star? Hearing Ewing's words, Baiyu's pupils slightly contracted. The abduction of Xiaoya was a deliberate move by the brain. And the brain most likely knew that Xiaoya was in the 3 pure cosmos. But even so, the brain still ordered the destruction of the 3 pure cosmos. If Baiyu hadn't held compassion for the lives on Blue Star and instead chose to execute the brain's order, then Xiaoya would have truly died by his hand, and the Skywalkers and Baiyu would have become mortal enemies. Having realized this, Baiyu understood that after Xiaoya was chosen by the will of the primordial chaos, the brain had already become murderous towards him. Be big brother. I'm going to die. Ewing was being choked by Baiyu, making it difficult for him to breathe. He quickly yelled out to Baiyu. Hearing Ewing's words, Baiyu snapped back to reality, slightly loosened his grip, but still held Ewing's neck, saying, Take me to see my daughter. It's not impossible for me to take you there. After all, our goal in rescuing your wife and daughter was to cooperate with you. But, with his life threatened, Ewing's tone softened, and he pleaded to Baiyu in a low voice, Big brother, can you talk nicely? I'm being choked by you. The pressure is really high. I swear, I really won't run. You better be clear about whose hands your life is in. Having achieved his goal, Baiyu didn't continue to force Ewing. In his opinion, Ewing was definitely not an important figure in the Skywalkers. At best, he was a pawn, not important to the Skywalkers. And it was precisely because of this that he dared to be so aggressive, extracting the information he wanted from Ewing. If the Skywalkers wanted to cooperate with him, they would definitely not turn against him over a mere Ewing. Of course, Bayu's actions also had a gambling element to them. If he truly showed that he cared about Bai Xiaoya's life and was willing to do anything to save her, then in the end, he would become a puppet of the Skywalkers again, and Bai Xiaoya would never be rescued. And now, he had won the bet. It was estimated that the Skywalkers, having seen that they couldn't use Bai Xiaoya to threaten Baiyu, would ultimately choose to return Bai Xiaoya, doing a favor in the process. After regaining his freedom, Yuing immediately retreated, maintaining a certain distance from Baiyu. However, Yuing didn't dare to slip away under Baiyu's watch. He stood in the distance and said to Baiyu, "Mr. Bai, I can take you to see your daughter, but let me state beforehand, we cannot completely trust you yet. If any overseers discover our base, we will assume that it was you who did it. At that time, I can't guarantee the safety of you and your daughter." There's no need to waste your breath on those words. I have a plan. Having been interrupted by Baiyu, Yuing couldn't say anything else. He had no choice but to open a spatial teleportation channel and said, "Follow me." Baiyu nodded, but he didn't directly walk into the spatial teleportation channel. Instead, he stared straight at Yuing. "Mr. Bai?" Yuing felt Baiyu staring at him. His heart skipped a beat, and he called out cautiously, "Before we go, have you forgotten something?" Baiyu suddenly asked, "Forgotten something?" Yuing was stunned, then carefully thought it over, looking at Baiyu with confusion. "I haven't forgotten anything. Look around you again," Baiyu said. Yuing glanced around, his eyes still filled with confusion. "This city has already been leveled by you, Mr. Bai. What is there to see?" "You know that the city was leveled?" Baiyu raised an eyebrow slightly. "Currently, there are many overseers watching the three pure cosmos. If I leave with you like this, once the barrier here disappears, it will be hard for them not to know of your existence." Hearing Baiyu's words, Yuing suddenly understood. Then he asked Baiyu, "What is your opinion, Mr. Bai?" Baiyu beckoned to Yuing, saying, "Return the souls you absorbed." Hearing Baiyu's words, the corner of Yu Ying's mouth twitched. However, under the pressure of Baiyu's aura, he didn't dare to play any tricks. He had no choice but to spit out all the souls he had devoured. Baiyu collected the souls of all the living beings in South River City and directly extracted some of Yu Ying's source power. Seeing Baiyu extract some of his source power again, Yuing couldn't help but worry. He quickly said, "Mr. Bai, those are not souls." "Shut up." Baiyu interrupted Yuing. He then used Yu Ying's source power to create new bodies for all the people of South River City, reverse time, and restored the destroyed city. Afterwards, Baiyu erased the memories of everyone in South River City during this time, sending them back to their new bodies and restoring South River City to its state before it was destroyed. After doing all this, Baiyu easily destroyed the barrier constructed by Yuing, restoring South River City to its original state. Yu Ying's heart was bleeding when he saw that his precious source power had been used by Baiyu to restore the city. The source power that Baiyu had consumed just now to rebuild the city would take him at least 10,000 years to replenish. However, Baiyu didn't think he had done anything wrong. After restoring the city, he said to Yuing, "Let's go." Yuing was so angered by Baiyu's attitude that his teeth itched, but there was nothing he could do to Baiyu. He could only grit his teeth and said, "Yes, follow me." Yuing didn't want to see the city that made him so heartbroken again. He plunged into the spatial channel and teleported away. Baiyu looked at the still open spatial channel in front of him, turned back and glanced at the sky, then concealed his aura and stepped into it. Chapter 254:0. The Great Xia Country, the Qinling Mountain Range. The Qinling Mountain Range was the longest mountain range in Great Xia. This was the most expansive primeval forest, and also one of the most spiritually abundant blessed lands on all of Blue Star. Within the Qinling Mountain Range, there were not only ancient ferocious beasts that had existed in Great Xia since ancient times, but also many immortals who had built their own cave dwellings. This place was a paradise for cultivators and a forbidden place for Great Xia. However, neither the officials of Great Xia nor the immortals and ancient beasts in the Qinling Mountain Range knew that beneath the Qinling Mountain Range, a huge space had been excavated. In the center of that space stood a huge ancient bronze gate. Surrounding the bronze gate was a city with an extremely different style. At that moment, The space here suddenly cracked open, and Yu Ying led Bai Yu out of the spatial rift. The instant Bai Yu entered this space, he was drawn to the 100-meter-high bronze gate. The gate. The moment he saw the bronze gate, Bai Yu remembered the gate that the heavenly Tao of Blue Star had mentioned. An AI Shuang was the key to opening this bronze gate. At the moment, the bronze gate was tightly closed, not emitting any aura. It was as if it was just a huge sculpture. Although magnificent, it had no function. Yu Ying didn't know what Bai Yu was thinking. After glancing at the bronze gate, he said to Bai Yu, "Mr. Bai, follow me. I'll take you to see your daughter." With that, Yu Ying flew straight towards a cubicle building that was suspended in midair. The walls were smooth and seamless. He pressed his palm against the smooth surface of the building. Bai Yu followed behind Yu Ying, glanced at the city, and asked Yu Ying, "Why are there no other people in this city?" Yu Ying didn't hide anything and explained, "The main force of the Skywalkers is still outside the primordial chaos. Not many Skywalkers have entered the primordial chaos. They all have their own tasks and will not stay on Blue Star." While Yu Ying was speaking, a door appeared on the smooth wall. Yu Ying retracted his palm, stepped aside, and said to Bai Yu, "Mr. Bai, your daughter is inside. You can push the door open yourself." Hearing Yu Ying's words, Bai Yu, whose mood had been relatively calm, felt a slight surge of emotion. Before this, although he could go to the three realms at any time to see his wife and daughter, the three realms had always been controlled by the brain. He had no way to take his wife and daughter out of the three realms, no way to make them completely safe. Now, it was the first time Bai Yu would meet Bai Xiaoya outside of the three realms. Taking a deep breath, Bai Yu calmed his emotions and pushed the door open. At that moment, Bai Xiaoya was quietly lying in the room, her breathing steady. Xiaoya. Seeing the sleeping Bai Xiaoya, Bai Yu became excited. He immediately enveloped Bai Xiaoya with his soul power, wanting to awaken her, but he found that Bai Xiaoya couldn't be woken up at all. Yu Ying, who was outside the door, seemed to have expected this. Without waiting for Bai Yu to ask, he immediately explained, "She has been sleeping since we rescued her. This has nothing to do with us." However, this time, Bai Yu surprisingly did not get angry. Instead, he calmly replied, "Yes, I know." He had already learned from Zhang Zixuan that Bai Xiaoya had been chosen by the will of the primordial chaos. At the moment, Bai Xiaoya was in a deep sleep. It was highly likely that her consciousness was undergoing trials. Before Bai Xiaoya passed the trials, she probably wouldn't wake up. Bai Yu didn't try to forcefully awaken Bai Xiaoya. After carefully checking Bai Xiaoya's body and confirming that neither the brain nor the overseers had done anything to her, he took Bai Xiaoya into his small world. Before Bai Xiaoya became the embodiment of the will of the primordial chaos, Bai Yu didn't feel safe placing Bai Xiaoya anywhere in the primordial chaos except for his small world. After ensuring Bai Xiaoya's safety, Bai Yu asked Yu Ying, "Besides Xiaoya, is my wife, Lu Wan, in your hands?"
No.
Yu Ying shook his head. "We paid a considerable price to rescue Bai Xiaoya. The situation was urgent, and there was no time to save a second person. No matter what, thank you. I owe you a favor." Bai Yu wasn't surprised by this and thanked Yu Ying. Although the Skywalker's motive for rescuing Bai Xiaoya was impure, and it was also likely that the brain deliberately released Bai Xiaoya, at least Bai Yu had now rescued Bai Xiaoya, and the Skywalkers had contributed to it. A gentleman looks at actions, not intentions. Bai Yu could consider that he owed the Skywalkers a favor for now. Yu Ying never expected that Bai Yu also had such a gentle side. He was a little uncomfortable, and for a moment, he didn't know how to respond. After being stunned for a moment, Yu Ying smiled at Bai Yu. "Mr. Bai, you should also know that the reason why we Skywalkers helped you save Bai Xiaoya is to seek cooperation with you. Now that we've shown our sincerity and are not pursuing the matter of Emojiang, then what is your answer, Mr. Bai?" Hearing Yu Ying's words, Bai Yu smiled and said, "It's not impossible for me to cooperate with you. But based on the methods you've shown so far, in my opinion, your invasion of the primordial chaos is akin to courting death." "Why do you say that, Mr. Bai?" Yu Ying asked. Bai Yu himself wanted to use the Skywalkers to restrain the brain. He didn't intend to hide anything at this moment. He said, "Honestly, the brain has long known that you are already in the primordial chaos. And the reason why you were able to rescue my daughter is also highly likely because the brain deliberately allowed it. This, Mr. Bai, you're not joking, are you? Yu Ying's expression slightly changed. We are acting so covertly. How could we have been exposed? And why would the brain let you rescue your daughter? Isn't it supposed to use your daughter to hold you hostage? Bai Yu concealed some important information and smiled. Because the brain has already started planning to get rid of me. In that case, Bai Xiaoya is no longer useful to it. It let you kidnap Xiaoya just to escalate the conflict between you and me. After all, I am the 8th king of the primordial chaos, representing the interests of the primordial chaos. The brain cannot possibly trust me. This? Yu Ying was a little confused after hearing Bai Yu's explanation. Although he didn't want to believe it, what Bai Yu said made sense, and he couldn't help but believe it. This matter is extraordinary. I must report it. Yu Ying came back to his senses and said to Bai Yu, Mr. Bai, please allow me to leave for a moment. I'll go. No need. I already know about this. At that moment, a clear voice rang out, causing Yu Ying to pause. Lord Zero? Bai Yu turned to look and saw a man wearing a 7-pillar mask just like his. He had walked out of the spatial rift. Zero, wearing the mask, looked at Bai Yu and held out his hand. Mr. Bai, it's nice to meet you. I am a Skywalker, codename Zero. Chapter 255. Outside the Chaos. Zero? Bai Yu looked at the mysterious man wearing a 7-pillar mask in front of him, raising an eyebrow slightly. Do you have a voice in the Skywalkers? My status in the Skywalkers is about the same as yours in the Overseers. I'm the one in charge of the Skywalkers currently in the primordial chaos. Zero smiled at Bai Yu, his tone full of composure. After hearing Zero's introduction, Bai Yu also smiled, saying, I thought it would take us some time before we met. That was the original plan. But I found out that Mr. Bai doesn't seem to like our approach, so I thought I should come out early so that we could be honest with each other. It's better for both sides. Bai Yu neither confirmed nor denied Zero's words, but instead asked, You just said that you know about the brain's plans? That's right, Zero nodded slightly. The brain's power is something we Skywalkers understand even more than Mr. Bai does, and we know that the reason we were able to rescue your daughter is because the brain deliberately allowed it. But we also turned it to our advantage. Based on our investigation of you, Mr. Bai, as long as we could rescue your daughter, then no matter what the brain is plotting, we could gain your favor, right? Bai Yu didn't deny it. He nodded and said, Indeed, I owe you a favor, but I'm very curious, why did you go to such great lengths to help me? If you're talking about turning a 7-pillar, there are several 7-pillars in the Overseers with a higher position, older qualifications, and who are more trusted by the brain than me. Aren't they more useful than me? We have our reasons for valuing Mr. Bai. Zero smiled slightly at Bai Yu. Moreover, those foolish 7 pillars cannot compare to you, Mr. Bai, at all. No need for flattery. Bai Yu didn't fall for Zero's tactic and said, Let's talk business. What do you want me to do in exchange for this favor? It's very simple. Zero chuckled, looking at the huge bronze gate in the center of the space. We want Mr. Bai to help us open that gate. Have me help you open that gate? That's right. That gate connects the interior and exterior of the primordial chaos. It is an important channel for us to enter the primordial chaos. However, we Skywalkers are outsiders after all. We are not welcomed by the will of the primordial chaos. On top of that, the brain has also set up barriers in the primordial chaos, wrapping it up tightly. We need to pay a considerable price to send people in. As the 8th king of the primordial chaos, you were chosen by the primordial chaos as a ruler. For you to open the gate, it will take no effort at all. If Mr. Bai can help us with this, we would be extremely grateful. Help you open the gate, Bai Yu chuckled. To put it bluntly, isn't that just me being a guide for you? The Skywalkers were an external force planning to invade the primordial chaos, and in essence, they were no different from the Overseers. If Bai Yu helped the Skywalkers complete their invasion and successfully defeated the Overseers, the primordial chaos would merely be ruled by a different group. The outcome would be the same, and it could potentially become even worse. Moreover, if the Skywalkers and Overseers were to start a war in the primordial chaos, Its brutality would probably be even more terrifying than the Seven King War that was sparked when the overseers invaded the primordial chaos back then. At that time, countless living beings would suffer a devastating catastrophe. It wasn't impossible for the primordial chaos to restart. Zero wasn't surprised by Bayu's answer, and he smiled. We understand your concerns, Mr. Bai. However, our goal is always the overseers, not occupying the primordial chaos. As long as Mr. Bai can help us, we promise. Once we defeat the brain, all of the Skywalkers will leave the primordial chaos immediately. Of course, words alone are not enough. We'll also give Mr. Bai a way to counter us. As he spoke, a strange bronze key appeared in Zero's palm, and he said to Bayu, "This key is the only key to open that ancient bronze gate. I can give it to you, Mr. Bai. Afterwards, you, Mr. Bai, with the key, can close the bronze gate at any time and drive us out of the primordial chaos." Bayu looked at the bronze key in Zero's hand. Hearing Zero's sincere words, if he hadn't known that the real key was AI Shuang, he probably would have believed him. Bayu didn't expose Zero's lie, nor did he immediately take the bronze key. He continued to ask, "Even if I can help you enter the primordial chaos, how can you prove that you have enough strength to defeat the brain? Otherwise, even if I let you in, you will only be slaughtered by the overseers, and I will be dragged down with you." Zero smiled again when he heard Bayu's question, saying, "You can rest assured about the strength of our Skywalkers. Our prophet's power is no less than the brain's. Since we dare to come to the primordial chaos, we definitely have our own trump cards." Bayu shook his head slightly. "Words are not enough. I cannot help you based on just a few words, unless you allow me to see your prophet. I've seen the brain. Once I see your prophet, I'll naturally be able to judge the strength of both sides and then make the right decision." Ewing interrupted, "The prophet is supreme. How could we meet his honorable self at will?" Bayu spread his hands. "Then there's nothing I can do. After all of my resources are in the primordial chaos. The favor I owe you is not enough to risk everything. You might as well change your request." Zero took a deep look at Bayu, remained silent for a moment, then said, "It's not impossible for you to meet the prophet, but are you prepared? Our headquarters are outside the primordial chaos. If you want to meet the prophet, you have to leave the primordial chaos, and there are endless dangers outside the primordial chaos. You could die at any moment. Moreover, not all Skywalkers are as friendly to you as I am. There are quite a few people who want to kill you. Once you go, Mr. Bai, I can't guarantee your safety." Hearing Zero's words, Bayu merely smiled and said, "Just take me there. I'll take care of my own safety." Bayu knew very well his and his family's current situation. The brain could make a move on them at any time, and at present, he had no power to resist. There were no ways for him to improve his strength in the primordial chaos. Now, he could only find a glimmer of hope in that unknown world outside the primordial chaos. Even if the outside was a dragon's den and a tiger's lair, hiding countless dangers, he still had to venture out and try. Hearing Bayu's words, Ewing gave Bayu a deep look, then said, "I don't know if your choice, Mr. Bai, is wise or foolish, but so be it. In order to express our sincerity, we will take you out to meet the prophet." Chapter 256, The End of Time. "Lord Zero, are you really going to take him out?" Ewing looked at Zero in shock, never expecting Zero would actually agree to Bayu's ridiculous request. Zero looked at Ewing and said, "Since we promised Mr. Bai, we will naturally do it. This time, you will be the one to take Mr. Bai back." Me? Ewing was stunned. He never expected that he was the one who had been dragged into this. He immediately revealed a bitter face. "Lord Zero, I think this matter, isn't it a bit ill-considered? After all, the dangers outside the primordial chaos were not a joke, and there were many Skywalkers inside who naturally hated the overseers." Ewing didn't need to think to know that having Bayu, a seven-pillar, go to the Skywalkers' headquarters would surely set off a bloodbath. At that time, regardless of whether Bayu died or not, Ewing, who was responsible for bringing Bayu back, wouldn't be able to escape the consequences. Zero looked coldly at Ewing, saying, I still have important matters to attend to in the primordial chaos and cannot leave for the time being. This matter will be your responsibility, after all. You were the one who brought Mr. Bai back. Hearing Zero's words, Ewing shuddered and a deathly look appeared on his face. He finally understood. Because he failed to deal with Baiyu, Zero did not intend to let him off the hook. Having him bring Baiyu back was Zero's punishment. Whether he lived or died afterwards, it would all depend on his own fate. Realizing this, Ewing didn't dare to raise any more objections and said bitterly, "Your subordinate understands." After instructing Ewing, Zero then said to Baiyu, "Mr. Bai, the outside of the primordial chaos is a void. There is no concept of time there. No matter how long you stay out there, the time that passes in the primordial chaos is random. It could be a day, or it could be 10 billion years. So when you go out, I will need to set up a time formation for you to fix the time point of your return, Mr. Bai. How long do you think is suitable before your return?" Baiyu took a deep look at Zero, then said, "If possible, the sooner the better." "All right, but I also need some time for my matters. I won't be able to bring you back in a short time. Then I will set your return time to be 1 month from now. Is that acceptable?" "Yes." Baiyu nodded slightly. "Then I will go set up the time formation for Mr. Bai. Ewing, you will be responsible for all matters relating to Mr. Bai." Zero gave Ewing instructions, then disappeared from the spot. The instant Zero left, Baiyu could feel the time throughout the entire space being distorted. He estimated that Zero had set up the formation. The time in this space had stopped. Once he stepped out, it would be 1 month later. By then, the overseers would probably have destroyed the 3 pure cosmos. However, Baiyu didn't have time to think about the 3 pure cosmos and Blue Star. He looked at Ewing, who wore a bitter face, and said, "How do we leave the primordial chaos?" "Mr. Bai, I really don't know what to say to you. Why do you have to leave the primordial chaos?" Ewing looked at Baiyu with a bitter face. "The dangers outside are beyond what you can imagine. Besides us Skywalkers and the Overseers, there are countless dangers out there. This trip is truly fraught with peril." Baiyu raised an eyebrow slightly. "Is it really that bad? Aren't we going to your headquarters? The dangers should only come from inside the Skywalkers. How is it related to those unknown dangers?" Ewing honestly replied, "I won't hide it from you. We Skywalkers entered using a one-way teleport. If we want to go back, we can only go to the end of the primordial chaos's river of time to leave the primordial chaos from there. After that, I'll use a teleportation talisman to return to the Skywalkers' headquarters. If everything goes smoothly, there won't be any danger. But the fear is that something will go wrong." "For example?" Baiyu continued to ask. Ewing said, "Crossing the river of time of the primordial chaos is relatively simple. We just need to avoid the Overseer's searches. With your identity and status in the Overseers, you should be able to do that easily. However, the outside of the primordial chaos is a void. All of our senses, including our soul power, are useless. Moreover, there is no concept of space out there. In other words, once we go out, we could end up anywhere. If we're unlucky and land in a dangerous place, then I'm afraid I won't even have a chance to use the teleportation talisman, and we'll both die instantly." Baiyu raised an eyebrow. "So, whether we can return to the Skywalker's headquarters all depends on luck?" Ewing said with a bitter face, "That's right. So, Mr. Bai, why don't we just not go out? The Prophet's power is definitely amazing. He won't let you down." "No, I still want to see him with my own eyes." Baiyu shook his head, refusing Yu Ying's request. Although leaving the primordial chaos was a gamble, he could die at any time. But staying in the primordial chaos would definitely mean death. Baiyu himself had a very strong sense of danger. The series of events he encountered on Blue Star, coupled with the brain's actions, he could already sense that the brain had turned murderous. This departure from the primordial chaos was an opportunity for him, a chance to turn the tables. As long as he could survive it and make a breakthrough on the outside, then he would not only be able to overcome the crisis brought on by the brain, but he would also be able to completely liberate himself from the brain's control. Ewing didn't know that Baiyu was already in a desperate situation. He only knew that Baiyu's impulsive actions were likely to kill him. He hated Baiyu so much that his teeth itched. But bringing Bai back was the mission Zero had entrusted to him. If he disobeyed, his fate would definitely be more miserable than death. Ewing knew he was powerless to change the outcome. He could only let out a heavy sigh and said to Bai, "Since you have already decided, Mr. Bai, I have nothing more to say. Let's go." You, Mr. Bai, are more familiar with the route before we leave the primordial chaos. You can lead the way. Once we reach the end of time, I'll take you out. No problem. Bai nodded slightly, tearing open space and bringing Yu Ying into the primordial chaos's river of time. The upper reaches of the primordial chaos's river of time represented the primordial chaos's past, while the lower reaches represented the primordial chaos's future. The entire unceasingly flowing river represented the primordial chaos's history. Within the river of time, each drop of water represented a space-time. And at the end of the river of time was the very beginning of the primordial chaos's birth. It was the beginning of everything, and also the end of all things. However, after the overseers ruled the primordial chaos, the river of time also became the overseer's private property. The history of the primordial chaos was now determined by the overseers. After becoming a seven-pillar, Bai had traversed through space-time through the river of time in order to carry out missions. He had even participated in the First Seven King War, changing history. When traversing the river of time, Bai had also gone to the end of the river of time. There was only a dark pond that endlessly gushed out the water of time. There was nothing else. This time, as a seven-pillar, Bai could travel through space-time at will. He easily brought Yu Ying through the entire river of time and reached the end of time. We're here. Bai looked at the pond of time in front of him that was continuously gushing out the water of time. He released the gloomy Yu Ying and said, "Next, it's your turn to perform." Chapter 257, The Daughter of Chaos, by Lan. Yu Ying stood at the end of time, looking at the dark spring that continuously gushed out the water of time, pursing his lips, his eyes filled with fear and hesitation. He still didn't want to go out. Turning to Bai, he said, "Mr. Bai, listen to my advice. There's really nothing good outside. That place is nothing but danger after danger. It's not suitable for any living creature to survive. Otherwise, why do you think the brain and the prophets all want to fight over the primordial chaos? Because the primordial chaos is one of the few suitable places for living beings to live. Only in the primordial chaos can we live well." Bai was unmoved by Yu Ying's words, and he continued, "If you really don't want to go, I won't force you. Help me open the exit and give me the teleportation talisman to your Skywalker's headquarters. You can then return." Yu Ying was somewhat happy when he heard the first half of Bai's sentence, thinking that Bai had come to his senses. However, when he heard the second half, he became utterly hopeless again. "Mr. Bai, don't do this. If Lord Zero finds out that I let you go out alone and didn't follow you, then my fate will be worse than death. Since you know that, why haven't you opened the passage yet?" Bai narrowed his eyes at Yu Ying, urging him. Hearing Bai's words, Yu Ying shuddered, yes. He dared not hesitate any further. He took out a strange jade from his palm and threw it into the spring at the end of time. Then he rapidly formed hand seals, chanting a strange incantation. Soon, the spring at the end of time began to boil, and a strange crack split open from it, with pitch blackness inside. Boom! However, before Yu Ying could speak, a pitch-black giant beast charged out of the spring of time, directly shattering the crack Yu Ying had opened and roaring at Bai and Yu Ying. "Oh no, Mr. Bai. It's a chaos space-time beast." Yu Ying's expression drastically changed as he saw the chaos space-time beast emerging from the spring of time. He quickly said to Bai, "The chaos space-time beast is the embodiment of the will of the primordial chaos. Its power is enough to restart the entire primordial chaos. Its appearance now is definitely because the will of the primordial chaos doesn't want us to go out." Chaos space-time beast. Hearing Yu Ying's words, Bai's gaze towards the pitch-black beast changed. Xiaoya had already been chosen by the will of the primordial chaos, and the chaos space-time beast was an embodiment of the will of the primordial chaos. The appearance of the chaos space-time beast at the end of time now could explain a lot of things. "You retreat to the back, and don't run around." Baiyu had only just finished instructing Yuing, when Yuing had already consciously hid behind Baiyu, not daring to move. In front of a creature at the top of the primordial chaos's pyramid like the chaos space-time beast, the self-aware Yuing was very clear that he was just an insect that could be crushed to death with a flick of a finger. Now, he could only hide behind Baiyu, the 8th primordial king, to have any chance of survival. After all, Baiyu, as a ruler chosen by the primordial chaos, was essentially in the same family as the chaos space-time beast. The chaos space-time beast stared at Baiyu, the violence in its eyes gradually disappearing. Then, it said to Baiyu in a dull voice, "Outside, dangerous, you, hope, cannot go." Hearing the chaos space-time beast's words, Yu Ying was overjoyed. He quickly said to Baiyu, "Mr. Bai, even the chaos space-time beast has come out to remind you. We really can't go outside." Baiyu didn't sense any hostility from the chaos space-time beast, so he relaxed his guard and said, "I must go. The brain has already become murderous towards me and my daughter. Going back is a dead end." Hearing Baiyu's words, the chaos space-time beast was silent for a moment, then said, "You can, but daughter of chaos cannot go." "Daughter of chaos, are you talking about Xiaoya?" Baiyu asked. "Yes, she, very important, cannot have mishap." The chaos space-time beast nodded. "If I am not in the primordial chaos, no one will be able to protect her." Baiyu said again, "I can." The chaos space-time beast said again, "She, become me, undying, unperishable." "Why did you choose her?" Baiyu asked again. Actually, after hearing the chaos space-time beast's words, Baiyu was already considering entrusting Bai Xiaoya to the chaos space-time beast. Taking Bai Xiaoya with him to such a dangerous place outside the primordial chaos was Baiyu's helpless decision. If the chaos space-time beast could protect her, then that would be the best outcome. Even if the brain were to attack Bai Xiaoya later, Bai Xiaoya, as the embodiment of the will of the primordial chaos, unless the brain completely destroyed the primordial chaos, it would only be able to seal her. Compared to being killed, being sealed was a much better outcome. At least, there was still hope. The chaos space-time beast continued, "She, good and evil, plan, hope." A plan of good and evil? Hearing the chaos space-time beast's words, Baiyu's pupils suddenly contracted. Again with good and evil? Ever since he met the two mysterious men in the 3000 cosmos, he found that everything in the primordial chaos had their traces behind it. It seemed that the Skywalkers and the Overseers were just pawns in their hands. Baiyu thought he could see through many people, but he couldn't see through good and evil. "Cannot say." The chaos space-time beast replied, "Daughter of chaos, give to me, you, go out." Okay. Baiyu also knew that he couldn't ask anything earth-shattering from the chaos space-time beast. He didn't continue to pursue the matter. Instead, he summoned Bai Xiaoya, who was sleeping in his small world. When the chaos space-time beast saw Bai Xiaoya, it opened its huge mouth and directly swallowed Bai Xiaoya. The chaos space-time beast's body became translucent, and Baiyu could see that Bai Xiaoya was constantly absorbing the power of the chaos space-time beast, and her aura was also increasing madly. Bai Xiaoya seemed to have formed an inseparable connection with the primordial chaos. After confirming that the chaos space-time beast could truly protect Bai Xiaoya, Baiyu felt a weight lift from his heart. He now had no worries about leaving. Baiyu completely relaxed, and a smile returned to his lips. He said to the chaos space-time beast, "This journey is uncertain. It's hard to know if I'll live or die." Bai Xiaoya was originally a nickname I gave her, but because of everything that has happened, I have never given her a real name. I may not be able to return this time, so I hope to give her a new name, with the hope that she will have a new life. You say, I remember. The chaos space-time beast nodded and said to Baiyu. Baiyu nodded slightly, saying, "I hope that after she grows up, she will be as beautiful as an immortal, elegant and lovely, noble and unyielding, like a gentleman orchid flower. Therefore, her given name shall be Lawn." Bai Lawn. The chaos space-time beast repeated Bai Xiaoya's formal name once. "Good name, I remember." The daughter of chaos is Bai Lawn. Chapter 258. Hell and Heaven. After giving Bai Xiaoya a formal name, Bai Yu had fulfilled his last wish, and he felt incomparably serene. And behind him, Ying became even more despairing at seeing Bai Yu's current state. He knew very well that Bai Yu now was not afraid of death. Nothing could stop Bai Yu from leaving the primordial chaos. And he, who was afraid of death, was following the fearless Bai Yu. What awaited him was destined to be a painful journey. However, although Ying was in despair, he couldn't do anything about it. He had already boarded the pirate ship. After merging with Bai Lan, the chaos space-time beast opened its huge mouth again, sending a strange ball of energy from its body into Bai Yu's body. The instant that strange energy entered his body, Bai Yu felt a warm current flowing through his meridians, and then both his physical body and soul strength increased greatly. At that moment, Bai Yu felt that his strength was no less than that of the head of the 7 pillars, Tianji. Suddenly obtaining such a boost, Bai Yu was incredibly delighted. He thanked the chaos space-time beast. Thank you. Wish, martial luck, prosperous. The chaos space-time beast took a deep look at Bai Yu. Then, without saying anything else, it disappeared into the spring of time with Bai Lan. The end of time returned to its tranquility. After seeing the chaos space-time beast disappear, the pressure on Ying's shoulders suddenly vanished. He finally relaxed again. After the chaos space-time beast disappeared, he suddenly realized that the chaos space-time beast had been staring at him the entire time. As long as he had made any rash moves, only death would have awaited him. Thinking of this, Ying suddenly felt a sense of relief, as if he had survived a disaster. After recovering, Ying's gaze towards Bai Yu had also changed. Before, the pressure that Bai Yu gave him was similar to the pressure that the Skywalker Zero gave him. But now, he couldn't sense any pressure from Bai Yu. It was as if Bai Yu was an ordinary person through and through. This change was definitely not because Bai Yu had weakened after receiving the Chaos Space-Time Beast's blessing. It could only be that Bai Yu had become even stronger, becoming a being beyond his understanding. Thinking of this, Ying's mood also improved. For the current Ying, leaving the primordial chaos was a foregone conclusion. The stronger Bai Yu became, the safer he would be. Feeling much better, Ying asked Bai Yu again, Mr. Bai, so, are we leaving now? Bai Yu restrained all his aura and nodded, saying, yes, let's go. The commotion from the chaos space-time beast was not small. The overseers are likely to have noticed it. If we don't leave now, I'm afraid we won't have another chance.
Yes.
Ying no longer hesitated. He took a deep breath, quickly formed hand seals, and chanted an incantation. The crack at the end of time opened once again. Bai Yu looked through the crack and could only see pitch blackness outside, nothing else. Ying stabilized the crack of time and took out the teleportation talisman to the Skywalker's headquarters beforehand. He said to Bai Yu, Mr. Bai, this exit will not last long. I'll make this short. After you go out, you need to hold on to me, otherwise we may be teleported to different places, and my teleportation talisman won't be able to bring you back. Okay. Bai Yu nodded, putting his hand on Ying's shoulder. All right, then, let's go. Ying took a deep breath, looked at the crack in front of him, took another deep breath, then gritted his teeth and rushed out. Bai Yu and Ying turned into a ray of light that passed through the crack. The crack at the end of time quickly closed and disappeared. Not long after Bai Yu and Ying left, 2 overseers opened their eyes at the end of time. They carefully examined the end of time again before reporting to headquarters. Report, everything is normal at the end of time. No suspicious persons were discovered. At the same time, outside the primordial chaos, Bai Yu and Ying had arrived in a darkness. There was nothing here. Not even the 6 senses worked. If Bai Yu hadn't confirmed that he was still holding on to Ying, he might have thought that he had been separated from Ying. Mr. Bai, you're still there, right? Ying sent a voice transmission to Bai Yu anxiously after he came out. Yes. Bai Yu responded via voice transmission. Is this place the outside of the primordial chaos? That's right. This outside is a void. There is no concept of time or space, and even the concept of existence cannot be defined. It's very dangerous here. Let's go back to the Skywalker's headquarters first. Mr. Bai, hold on to me tightly. Ying didn't dare to hesitate. He immediately activated the teleportation talisman he had taken out earlier, preparing to teleport away with Bai Yu. However, just as Yu Ying had injected his spiritual power into the teleportation talisman, a giant eye suddenly opened in the darkness, and Bai Yu and Yu Ying were right in the center of that eye's pupil. Yu Ying did not notice the eye beside him, but Bai Yu immediately reacted and quickly retreated with Yu Ying. Danger! Chi! The instant Bai Yu retreated with Yu Ying, the teleportation talisman in Yu Ying's hand instantly snapped in two and turned to ashes. Yu Ying was stunned on the spot. The teleportation talisman, gone. Bai Yu vaguely sensed the giant eye in the void. He immediately asked Yu Ying, "What the hell is that thing?" Yu Ying said with a sob, I don't know. I told you that it's incredibly dangerous outside the primordial chaos. We probably teleported into the territory of some supreme being. Damn it, are we that unlucky? Bai Yu cursed under his breath. While retreating with Yu Ying, he asked, "Do you have any more teleportation talismans?" And no, I only had one teleportation talisman. I need to make a new one. I don't have the materials. Yu Ying cried out directly, "Mr. Bai, we're doomed. It's all over." Shut up. Bai Yu stopped Yu Ying's cries and began to try his best to perceive his surroundings. Although the outside of the primordial chaos was said to block the six senses, and even soul power was unusable, Bai Yu, who had calmed down in the absolute darkness, was able to perceive some outlines. The thing that attacked them in the darkness was a creature similar to a giant dragon, exaggeratedly large. Just its eyes alone were big enough to rival the entire three realms. Bai Yu's perception, even after trying his best, was only able to roughly make out one of its heads. Almost instantly, Bai Yu determined that even with the blessing of the will of the primordial chaos, he was still no match for that unknown creature. No wonder they all say that it's dangerous outside. I've finally experienced it myself. Bai Yu was being chased by the unknown creature, but he did not panic at all. Instead, he became more and more composed. For Bai Yu, panic in a crisis would only hold him back. Only calm and thought could find a glimmer of hope in despair. Ever since the last time Bai Yu faced the overseers with Luo Ho in the three realms, he had never felt such pressure again. Being chased by an unknown behemoth now, for some reason, Bai Yu vaguely felt a little excited. In the eyes behind his mask, endless fighting and tint ignited. This place was hell, and also heaven. Chapter 259, Slaying the Dragon. Beyond the primordial chaos, in a treacherous and desolate expanse, Bai Yu, engulfed by the endless darkness, was frantically fleeing with Yu Ying in tow. Hot on their heels was a gargantuan, legendary dragon, its size bordering on the absurd. Yu Ying was utterly petrified. He dared not disturb Bai Yu and could only tightly shut his eyes, silently praying to the skywalkers within his heart. Amidst the gloom, Bai Yu was simultaneously fleeing and assessing the monstrous creature behind him, searching for a way out of this predicament. There's no concept of time or space outside the primordial chaos. Once I'm marked by that mysterious beast, no matter how fast I run or where I flee, I won't be able to shake it off. If I want to survive, I have no choice but to kill it. Bai Yu's mind raced. He immediately summoned the nameless, limitless sword and said to Yu Ying, "If you don't want to die, hold on to me as tightly as you can." Without another word, Bai Yu halted his escape, channeled his power into the nameless, limitless sword, and spun around to charge directly at the colossal beast. And Mr. Bai. Yu Ying was completely aghast to see Bai Yu changing directions, his mind on the brink of collapse. Yet, he understood perfectly the fate that awaited him if he were left alone in this outer space of the primordial chaos. Instantly transforming into a cloud of dark smoke, he coiled tightly around Bai Yu's waist, refusing to let go even for a moment. Roar! Seeing Bai Yu charging towards it, the dragon-like creature opened its maw and roared thunderously. Though no sound could exist within this darkness, both Bai Yu and Yu Ying's souls felt the full force of that monstrous bellow. Yu Ying, still wrapped around Bai Yu's waist, instantly began to bleed, his crimson fluid staining Bai Yu's white robes. Ignoring the deafening roar, Bai Yu propelled himself forward, dodging the snapping jaws. He aimed the nameless, limitless sword at the beast's eye, Clang! The sword struck the eye, but Baiyu felt as if he had hit a diamond. Sparks flew from the point of impact between the blade and the creature's eye. Even the hand that held the sword began to ache. It's this hard? Baiyu was stunned by the incredible defense of the beast's eye. Before he could react, he was smashed head-on, like a shooting star rocketing across the darkness. Thud! Baiyu was thrown into the mud-like ground, sinking deep into the sticky substance that covered him, severely limiting his movements. Roar! The beast's roar echoed once more. Baiyu couldn't react quickly enough to dodge a claw the size of several realms that was now rapidly descending upon him. The sticky substance around Baiyu exploded outwards from the impact, the force sending him hurtling further through the darkness. Fortunately, the sticky mud had acted as a buffer, preventing the full force of the claw from crushing him. In a moment, Baiyu managed to regain his balance in the darkness. That was close. Baiyu gripped the nameless, limitless sword, remembering the narrow escape. Had it not been for the mud-like substance, he would have surely been pulverized by that attack. Baiyu glanced towards the enormous creature once more. Perhaps it was due to his prolonged exposure to the darkness, but he found that his eyes were beginning to adjust, allowing him to make out the creature's silhouette. There are 3 unhealed claw marks on its neck. That might be a weak point. Seeing the wounds on the beast's neck, Baiyu immediately decided to focus his attacks there. The beast's eyes, seemingly its most vulnerable points, were unbelievably tough. It was hard to imagine how impervious the rest of its scale-covered body would be. Perhaps those wounds on its neck were his only chance. With his mind made up, Baiyu didn't hesitate and charged towards the beast once more. Ying, still clinging to Baiyu's waist, was numb to Baiyu's courage. Normal people encountering a beast like this would be running for their lives. Only a madman like Baiyu would dare to stand his ground and fight. Roar! Enraged at Baiyu's audacity to attack again, the beast roared and lifted its massive claw, intending to crush Baiyu into a pulp. However, the beast seemed to lack intelligence. Its actions were extremely predictable, and Baiyu had already anticipated every move it made. He easily avoided the claw attack, and just before the gaping maw closed in, he leapt inside, stepping onto its sharp teeth. Then, in the split second before the beast could close its jaws, he launched himself out from the gaps between its teeth, using the momentum to fly towards the beast's wounded neck. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Mr. Bai. Ying was utterly stunned by Baiyu's fluid movements, yelling in disbelief, his mind racing. Nameless, limitless sword. Baiyu paid no heed to Ying's excited cries. Instead, he channeled power into his sword, its sharp edge glowing with a brilliant, deadly light. Shirring, Baiyu gripped the sword in both hands and plunged it into the beast's wounds. Black blood splattered all over his body. Roar! The beast roared in agony, twisting its body and swiping its claws at its wound, attempting to pry Baiyu off. Baiyu held on to the sword with an iron grip, digging his feet into the beast's flesh, then suddenly pushed off. He dragged the nameless, limitless sword across the existing wounds, carving a fresh gash into the creature's flesh. The beast's roars of pain intensified as its body twisted more frantically. However, the more violently it struggled, the larger the wound Baiyu created, and the more blood it lost. Moving along the gash until he reached the spot where the flesh met the beast's scales, Baiyu realized that the flesh beneath the scales was exposed and vulnerable. Without hesitating, Baiyu stabbed the nameless, limitless sword through the wound and into the flesh beneath the scales, burrowing into the beast's body. The sword instantly expanded to an immeasurable length. With the sword, Baiyu tore through the flesh under the beast's scales, leaving a gash stretching tens of millions of miles across its body. A torrential flood of blood gushed out. The beast's movements grew weaker, and its roars gradually faded. Finally, the beast fell silent, floating lifelessly in the darkness. Deep within the beast's carcass, Baiyu, covered in blood, pushed aside a scale and climbed out, his face pale. Huff! I didn't expect the flesh under its scales to be so tough. Cutting through it almost drained me of all my strength. And Mr. Bai. Ying, having resumed his human form, stared at Baiyu in disbelief, unable to comprehend how Baiyu had just slaughtered a mysterious beast of the void right before his eyes. Chapter 260, The Void Core. I need to rest for a while. After slaying the monstrous beast, Baiyu was utterly exhausted. He lay down on its scales, trying his best to recover his strength. Mr. Bai, let me massage your legs. Yu Ying's admiration for Baiyu had reached its peak. He rushed to serve Baiyu, offering a massage. Baiyu had killed a mysterious beast born of the void the moment he arrived outside the primordial chaos. Such a feat. Even among the Skywalkers, only the most powerful individuals could have done something similar. Baiyu's position in Yu Ying's heart had risen to something akin to a prophet. More importantly, Yu Ying knew that in this dangerous place beyond the primordial chaos, only Baiyu could guarantee his survival. Baiyu didn't refuse Yu Ying's massage. While resting, he asked, Yu Ying, how long will it take you to remake the teleportation talisman? Hearing Baiyu's question, Yu Ying, who was diligently massaging Baiyu's legs, faltered. The smile on his face became odd. Seeing Yu Ying's expression, Baiyu sensed that something was amiss. He immediately sat up and asked, Don't tell me you can't do it anymore? Yu Ying wore a bitter expression as he explained, Mr. Bai. This isn't my fault. The fight was too intense. Plus the beast's roar nearly shattered my soul. I couldn't focus on anything else. What exactly happened? Baiyu interrupted, pressing him for details. Yu Ying immediately fell to his knees. I lost all the materials needed to make the teleportation talisman. Hearing Yu Ying's words, Baiyu nearly spat up blood. Even during the battle with the giant beast, his blood pressure had not been this high. Forcing himself to calm down, Baiyu asked, If we don't have the materials for the teleportation talisman, how are we going to get back? Yu Ying, fearing that Baiyu might kill him in his anger, quickly said, Mr. Bai, don't worry. The materials needed for the Skywalker's teleportation talisman are all common things. We only need to find an ordered world in this void, and I can quickly find replacement materials. Baiyu raised an eyebrow. There are other worlds outside the primordial chaos? That's right, Yu Ying nodded repeatedly. Although this outer space is a void, there are still ordered worlds, like the primordial chaos. However, chaotic worlds like the primordial chaos, vast in scale and with incredibly complete rules, are extremely rare. What we're likely to find are wastelands and dead worlds, with incomplete rules, and rarely any living creatures. At this point, Yu Ying, fearing Baiyu's blood pressure would climb higher, continued, Even wastelands and dead worlds will have various special materials. I can find suitable replacements within them. Hearing Yu Ying's explanation, Baiyu relaxed slightly. He then asked Yu Ying, How are we going to find these wastelands and dead worlds? Generally, you need special techniques. I'm just a minor figure in the Skywalkers, and I haven't qualified to learn any of them yet. Zing. Baiyu unsheathed the nameless, limitless sword. Then Mr. Bai, please calm down. Yu Ying quickly pacified the enraged Baiyu. When you were fighting that beast, you fell into a swamp-like area. That's the wasteland we're looking for. Next time, try not to talk in halves. Baiyu sheathed his sword. I almost chopped your head off. Yu Ying shrank back, then grinned at Baiyu. Thank you for sparing my life, Mr. Bai. I am eternally grateful. Oh, right. Mr. Bai, since you killed that beast, we can look inside its body for a void core. Void core? What's that? Baiyu asked. Yu Ying rubbed his hands together excitedly. That's a treasure. Every void core is extremely valuable. After consuming it, you can greatly improve your cultivation and inherit some of the beast's abilities. It's a huge boost to power. However, not every beast in the void will produce a void core, so I can't guarantee there is one inside this beast. Whether it has one or not, let's go look for it first. Baiyu was interested in anything that could increase his strength. He was now motivated and dove back into the beast's wound to look for the so-called void core. However, the beast's body was far too massive, comparable to a universe. Added to that, Baiyu's senses were severely limited in this void. He and Yu Ying searched the corpse for a long time without finding a void core. Mr. Bai, Do you think it's possible that the beast didn't have a void core? Ying, who had been following close behind Baiyu, couldn't help but ask him after searching for a long time with no success. Keep searching. We've barely explored a third of it. If this thing has a void core, it would be a shame to give up. Baiyu had enough patience and continued his search. In fact, Baiyu believed there should be a method to directly locate void cores, but he was ignorant of the outside world, and Ying was just a minor figure, similar to a watcher among the Skywalkers, and did not have much information. Therefore, they could only use this crude method and slowly feel their way. Fortunately, time was the one thing Baiyu had in abundance. He had enough patience to search the gigantic corpse. Rumble. As Baiyu and Ying were searching the giant corpse, it was suddenly tugged by something. What was that? Baiyu frowned, seeing the corpse jerk suddenly. Ying's face paled instantly. He trembled as he said, "Mr. Bai, could it be that the beast isn't completely dead? We're inside its stomach right now. Are we going to be digested?" "Don't scare yourself. That beast is long dead." The sound came from over there. "Let's go take a look." Baiyu remained calm and headed in the direction where the corpse had moved. Soon, Baiyu and Ying saw a giant tusk piercing the beast's skin, going through the entire body. "What's that?" Ying's legs went limp when he saw the tusk. He almost fell to his knees. "Is another one coming?" "This beast." Baiyu looked at the huge tusk and immediately thought of the claw marks on the beast's neck. It was likely that the one who left those claw marks was the same as the owner of the giant tusk. "It seems I killed someone else's prey." Realizing this, Baiyu narrowed his eyes. Just as he was planning to retreat with Ying, he suddenly noticed a dark, transparent pearl shimmering in the gloom. When he saw the pearl, Baiyu's pupils contracted. A void core? Chapter 261. A Mysterious World. Ying, is that a void core? Baiyu, upon seeing the transparent pearl behind the giant tusk, immediately asked Ying. Ying's face lit up as he looked at the pearl. He excitedly exclaimed, "Yes, Mr. Bai, that's a void core. Grab it quickly. It's an incredibly rare treasure." "Don't get so worked up. You're acting like a child." Hearing Ying's excitement, Baiyu couldn't help but smile, though he tried to sound calm, his own lips curving upwards. However, just as Baiyu was about to maneuver around the giant tusk to get to the void core, the tusk suddenly tore through the flesh of the beast's corpse. Baiyu and Ying stood inside the corpse, helplessly watching as a four-clawed beast, resembling a giant kuan, a mythical fish, swallowed the corpse's flesh along with the void core whole. Baiyu and Ying were utterly stunned. They felt as if 1,000 horses were stampeding through their minds. Ying licked his lips, then stiffly turned his head towards Baiyu, asking, Mr. Bai, what do we do now?" The void core was swallowed by that beast. Baiyu stared at the beast, which was several times larger than the one he had just killed. He noticed that it was now looking at them. His hand reflexively grabbed Ying's shoulder. "Forget about the void core. Let's get out of here." Baiyu pulled Ying backward as he ran. The beast opened its maw wide, snapping towards Baiyu and Ying. At the same time, the beast began to inhale, greatly slowing down Baiyu as he dragged Ying along. The beast's enormous mouth snapped shut, right where they had been standing. Ying, watching as the massive teeth pierced the flesh in front of them, felt his eyes widen in panic, and screamed to Baiyu, "Mr. Bai, we're going to be swallowed." Baiyu was struggling against the beast's suction force. There was no way for him to escape. Finally, he steeled himself and shouted to Ying, "Hold on to me. Don't let go, no matter what." "Why, yes." Overwhelmed by fear, Ying couldn't think. Without questioning Baiyu's intentions, he turned back into a dark mist, wrapping himself tightly around Baiyu's waist. Baiyu looked back at the beast's black interior and transformed into a black streak of light, hurtling deep into the beast's abyss-like body. Staying in the mouth would mean being chewed up by the massive teeth and then being digested. Instead, Baiyu chose to force his way into the beast's body, planning to rip it apart from the inside using the nameless, limitless sword. Nameless, limitless sword. Baiyu flew through the beast's insides. With the pitch-black surroundings, and the terrifying life force of the beast, he could sense nothing, truly rendered blind. In this situation, Bayu could only summon the nameless, limitless sword, continuously expanding it and stabbing it into the beast's flesh. As the sword pierced the beast's flesh, scalding hot blood splattered all over Bayu. Roar! A deafening roar echoed from inside the beast, the terrifying energy assaulting Bayu. Yu-Ying, still wrapped around Bayu's waist, was knocked unconscious by the roar, clinging to Bayu purely by instinct. Bayu was faring just as badly. He had already exhausted most of his power when he killed the dragon-like beast. Now, before he could recover, he was hit by a beast even stronger than the dragon. He was nearly destroyed. Fortunately, Bayu's strength was formidable. He managed to withstand the assault and steady his soul. Just as Bayu had regained his balance and was about to pierce through the beast's body, countless black spikes suddenly grew on the beast's inner walls, pushing Bayu's nameless, limitless sword out of the flesh. Then, a powerful suction force pulled Bayu and the nameless, limitless sword together. Damn it! Bayu was shocked that his sword could be pushed out of the flesh despite having pierced it so deeply. He quickly used the last of his spiritual energy to resist the beast's suction force. However, at that moment, the massive, planet-sized pieces of flesh and bone the beast had swallowed came flying toward him, crashing heavily into his body. The nameless, limitless sword slipped from his grasp. Yu-Ying was also sent flying by the mountains of flesh and was swallowed by the beast along with Bayu. Bayu barely managed to glimpse his sword and Yu-Ying before losing consciousness. He was swept away, along with the gigantic pieces of flesh, into the beast's interior. How much time had passed, Bayu didn't know. He found himself lying on a golden sandy beach, the salty seawater lapping against his face. Warm sunlight bathed his face, slowly bringing him back to consciousness. "Grandpa, look, there's a shipwrecked person here." Vaguely, Bayu heard a young girl's voice speaking an unfamiliar language. Then he felt his body being dragged. Bayu tried to resist, but his consciousness was still hazy, and his body was unresponsive. He could only let himself be dragged. Soon after, Bayu lost consciousness again, and the world went dark. The next time Bayu opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a soft wooden bed, the room filled with an unusual fragrance. "Where am I?" Bayu sat up, patting his head, which still ached slightly. He noticed that his clothes had been replaced with simple cloth garments. "Right, I was swallowed by the beast and then lost consciousness. How did I end up in this world?" Bayu took some time to sort through his memories and check his body. After confirming that he was unharmed and his power had returned to its peak due to sufficient rest, he breathed a sigh of relief. No matter where he was, as long as he still had his strength, everything would be all right. Bayu didn't rush to leave the room. He sat on the bed to meditate, allowing his inner energy to stabilize before he got off the bed and left the room. Upon exiting the room, Bayu saw several fishing nets hanging on the walls and unfamiliar dried fish hanging to dry outside the window. This is a fisherman's home? Bayu surveyed the interior of the house. He then pushed open the door and stepped out. He realized he was in a small fishing village, with an endless ocean in front of him. How did I get to this world? Bayu stared at the clear blue sky and the vast ocean, his eyes filled with confusion. He still couldn't understand how he had been swallowed by a beast and then suddenly transported to another world. Boom! Suddenly, from the distant ocean, a beast that looked similar to the one that had swallowed him, but much smaller, burst out of the water. It twisted in the air for a moment and then crashed back into the sea, sending waves rolling across the water. The small fishing village Bayu was in was momentarily showered by a light rain. Bayu watched the beast that had come out of the ocean, his eyes narrowing slightly. It seems. It wasn't a coincidence that I came to this world. Chapter 262, Whale God Island. Why, you're awake? Just as Bayu was trying to familiarize himself with this new world, a slightly familiar girl's voice sounded behind him. Bayu turned around to see a young girl with tan skin and freckles, but quite pretty nonetheless. She was carrying a basket of dried fish and staring at him with wide eyes. After thinking for a moment, Bayu recognized the voice from when he was still unconscious. She must have been the one who saved me. Bayu saw the first living person in this world and realized that she was his benefactor. Instead of using soul search, he wrapped the girl with his soul force. Without stealing her memories, he learned the language of this world, and then asked the girl, "Did you save me? I found you by the sea. My grandpa brought you back, but he went out fishing and won't be back until evening." The girl placed the dried fish she was carrying aside and continued talking to Bayu. "We occasionally find sailors who have washed ashore after shipwrecks. You must also be a sailor from the mainland, right? Oh, I already washed and mended your clothes. I'll go and get them for you later." "Thank you." Bayu did not explain his background. After thanking the girl, he asked, "Excuse me, miss, where is this place?" "This is Whale God Island, a sacred place blessed by the whale god," the girl replied. "My name is Tatasha. You can call me Asha." "Oh, what's your name?" "I'm Bayu." Bayu didn't hide anything from Tatasha. After telling her his name, he asked her several questions about this world. Bayu learned from Tatasha that Whale God Island was a desolate island in the middle of the ocean. It was originally uninhabited. More than 1,000 years ago, a group of people from the Eastern Sea Kingdom came to the island to escape war and settled down. The god worshipped on this island, the whale god, was the giant beast Bayu had seen earlier. Because that giant beast had been protecting the island for centuries, the island's inhabitants had been free from war and lived peaceful lives. However, because the giant beast often jumped out of the ocean, creating massive waves, ships would often be wrecked, and a few lucky sailors would be washed ashore to Whale God Island where they were rescued by the kind residents. Because of a strange barrier that enveloped the entire Whale God Island, sailors who came to the island could never leave. They ended up settling there permanently, marrying and having children. Because of that barrier, Whale God Island was cut off from the outside world. Only the village chief knew the history of the past, and Bayu couldn't get more information from Tatasha. After obtaining some information about this world from Tatasha, Bayu spread his spirit force across the entire island to personally explore this world. The island was shaped like a whale and wasn't very large. Just like Tatasha said, there was a strange barrier surrounding the island. Bayu used his spirit force to check the barrier and confirmed that it wouldn't be able to stop him. Then, he expanded his spirit force outside of the barrier and explored his surroundings. He discovered a vast continent about 300 nautical miles away. Bayu roughly estimated that the continent was about the size of the entire 3 pure universes and that it was filled with many powerful presences. This world is unbelievably huge. After discovering the continent, Bayu probed the sky with his spirit force and discovered another layer of transparent barrier. Outside of that barrier, it was completely black. Bayu could vaguely sense the beast's flesh from that darkness. After confirming the flesh wall outside of the barrier, Bayu finally realized that he was currently inside the belly of the giant beast. "I didn't expect such a large world to exist inside the beast. If I'm alright, then the nameless, limitless sword and Yuing should be somewhere in this world too. I have to find them as soon as possible." "Bayu, what are you muttering about?" Tatasha asked Bayu curiously, but she didn't pry. Instead, she said, "Oh, by the way, the village chief said after you woke up, I should take you to meet him. He'll arrange new housing and work for you. How are you feeling right now? How about resting a bit more before we go see the village chief?" Bayu regained his composure and smiled at Tatasha. "I'm alright, let's go meet the village chief. Once things settle down, I'll be sure to thank you properly." Bayu wasn't an ungrateful person. Since Tatasha had saved him, he needed to repay her kindness. Also, after using his spirit force to explore the surroundings of Whale God Island, he realized that the island wasn't as peaceful as it seemed. A danger that could destroy Whale God Island was approaching. Bayu planned to get rid of that danger before leaving the island and repay his debt to Tatasha. For Bayu, it would take some time to become familiar with this world, and solving the crisis would not take much effort. He could find the nameless, limitless sword and Yuing after he had taken care of the danger on Whale God Island. With those thoughts in mind, Bayu followed Tatasha to the village chief's house. "Village chief, I brought someone over." Tatasha called out loudly at the door of the village chief's house. Soon after, An old man with a cane opened the door and walked out. He sized up Bayu before asking, "Outsider, where did you come from?" Bayu shook his head and said, "My memory is hazy. I can't recall." "Can't recall? Huh," the village chief murmured. "Your language and accent are similar to ours, so you must be from the Eastern Sea Kingdom. But it doesn't matter. Outsider, no matter where you've come from, once you enter Whale God Island, you can't leave. You have to stay here from now on. We won't make things difficult for you, but you have to obey our rules, understand?" "Yes." Bayu nodded slightly. He didn't plan on staying here long anyway, so agreeing didn't matter. "Good," the village chief nodded in satisfaction. "Oh yes, what's your name?" "Grandpa Village Chief. His name is Bayu," Tatasha interjected. "Bayu?" The village chief repeated Bayu's name several times, as if he needed to do so in order to memorize it. After memorizing Bayu's name, the village chief told Bayu, "Bayu, there's an abandoned wooden house to the east of our village. I'll have someone repair it for you later. Until it's repaired, you can stay with Tatasha's family." "Oh yes, what skills do you have?" "While we are kind and welcoming in this village, we don't feed lazy people. Before I went to sea, I knew some martial arts," Bayu said modestly. "You are a martial artist?" The village chief's eyes flickered with surprise, clearly surprised at Bayu's identity. Then, his brows furrowed. Bayu saw a deep sense of wariness and worry in the village chief's eyes. Chapter 263. The Serpent Mother. What's wrong with being a martial artist? Bayu could sense that there was something off about the village chief's expression, but he didn't press the issue and instead asked the question directly. "Nothing." The village chief quickly regained his composure and smiled at Bayu. "It's just that martial artists are a bit rare. There are only 3 people in our entire Whale God Island who can call themselves martial artists. You're the 4th. It seems that you are qualified for the job of guarding the sacred land. I didn't expect a talented person like you to come to our Whale God Island." The village chief concealed all his true emotions and smiled at Bayu. "Bayu, welcome to Whale God Island." After Bayu met with the village chief followed the usual custom and gathered all the villagers who were still in the village to announce that Bayu had officially joined Whale God Village and had become a new villager. Afterward, the village chief asked Bayu to go home with Tatasha for the time being while he himself left in a hurry. On the way back to Tatasha's house, Tatasha looked at Bayu with a curious expression, as if she were looking at a rare treasure. "Am I that good looking?" Noticing Tatasha's gaze, Bayu couldn't help but tease Tatasha. "You're actually a martial artist," Tatasha exclaimed in surprise. "Is it strange?" Bayu asked. "Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Your skin is so soft and smooth. I thought you did some kind of clerical work. Don't they say that becoming a martial artist takes arduous training? You don't look like someone who has suffered much." "Some suffering isn't expressed on the outside." Bayu smiled at Tatasha. When they reached the door of her house, he suddenly stopped and said to Tatasha, "Asha, I want to go out of the village alone for a bit." "Huh? Your injuries haven't healed yet. What are you going out for?" Tatasha asked with concern. "I want to get to know Whale God Island better. Then I'll go with you. I'm a bit worried about you." "It's all right. I also want to be alone for a while." Bayu used an excuse to reject Tatasha's kindness. "Besides, there's no danger on Whale God Island, right?" "That's true, I guess." Tatasha nodded and stopped trying to stop Bayu, simply reminding him, "You can walk around near the village, but there's a cave to the north of the village, which is the sacred site of Whale God Village. Usually, only the village chief can go in." "Oh right, remember to come back for dinner. Since you just woke up, I'll cook a bowl of fish fillet porridge for you to help your body recover." "Okay, thank you." Bayu thanked Tatasha and then left the village. When no one was paying attention, he took to the air and headed north of the village. The danger he had discovered on Whale God Island was in a cave to the north of the village. As Bayu arrived at the entrance of the cave to the north of Whale God Village, he saw that the village chief was already shakily walking towards the cave entrance. Village chief. Seeing the village chief arrive at the entrance, Bayu immediately concealed his presence and observed from the shadows. The village chief lingered at the entrance for a while. Then, after confirming that no one was following him, he shakily entered the cave. The cave, which was said to be the sacred land of Whale God Village, was actually just an ordinary sacrificial site. At the deepest part of the cave was a statue of the whale god. Under the statue was a cave lake that connected to the ocean. Bayu followed the village chief to the deepest part of the cave. He saw the village chief fumbling around on the stone wall before pressing a switch. Rumble. The huge statue of the whale god slowly sank into the lake, and a huge statue of a serpent god rose from the bottom of the lake. The village chief knelt down in front of the serpent god statue and said respectfully, "Great Serpent Mother, please give me new instructions. Your loyal follower feels lost." Not long after the village chief's words fell, a giant serpent with 12 heads emerged from the bottom of the lake. Its huge eyes stared at the village chief and said calmly, "It is not yet time for the live sacrifice. Why did you awaken me?" The village chief said, "Great Serpent Mother, a martial artist has come to the island. I feel very apprehensive. I thought it was something important. A mere martial artist. Why would you be so nervous?" "I'm worried that he represents the will of the whale god and is here to disrupt the live sacrifice," the village chief said tremulously. "The live sacrifice ceremony is imminent. Now that there's an additional variable, I'm afraid that something will go wrong." Hearing the village chief's words, the giant serpent nodded. "Indeed. I've been planning this live sacrifice for a long time. I cannot allow any accidents to happen due to any small changes. Regardless of whether the martial artist was intentionally sent to Whale God Island by the whale god, you must find a way to lure him into the cave. I will eat him. We must ensure that nothing interferes with the live sacrifice." "Yes, I obey the serpent mother's instructions." The village chief kowtowed to the giant serpent. He then added, "Also, some villagers may have already noticed your presence. What should we do about that?" "How many people?" the giant serpent asked. "As far as I know, there are currently 2 families. 2 families are fine. The whale god shouldn't be able to detect them. Lure them into the cave as well. I will deal with them all." "But if we do that, won't the other villagers suspect something?" The village chief hesitated. The giant serpent laughed. "Huh, don't forget, you are a fishing village. Everyone goes out to sea to fish every day. It's normal for accidents to happen. Plus, they will all be sacrificed soon anyway, so even if the other villagers are suspicious, it won't matter." "Understood. I'll go arrange it now." After listening to the giant serpent's words, the village chief kowtowed to the giant serpent again, got up, and walked toward the exit of the cave. But before he could take 2 steps, he saw Bayu walking in, and his pupils contracted. He quickly backed away and exclaimed in shock, "Why you?" Bayu glanced at the giant serpent and the serpent statue in the lake and chuckled. "You guys worship the whale god, but you're secretly harboring a false god. You guys are really something." The giant serpent looked at Bayu, narrowed its eyes slightly, and asked in a deep voice, "Who are you?" The village chief immediately said, "Great Serpent Mother. He's the martial artist from outside. He found this place immediately after waking up. He must have been sent by the whale god." "A martial artist from outside?" Hearing the village chief's words, the giant serpent carefully examined Bayu again. Then it said, "No matter who you are, you dare to come and disturb me. I definitely won't let you leave here alive today." Bayu looked at the giant serpent with a smile. He picked up a suitable stone from the ground, tossed it in the air, and said, "Since Tatash's family saved me, I have to repay them. A man-eating beast like you, hidden on Whale God Island, is perfect for repaying that debt. After dealing with you, I can leave Whale God Island and do what I need to do." The giant serpent sneered, "A mere human dares to boast. Whoosh." Before the giant serpent could finish speaking, a stone flew through the air and smashed one of the giant serpent's heads. Blood splattered from the giant serpent's body. The remaining 11 heads screamed in agony, making the entire cave tremble. The village chief by the lake stared blankly. Chapter 264, Whale God Island in Crisis. Serpent Mother. The village chief looked at the giant serpent that was writhing in the lake in shock, his body trembling violently. He couldn't understand why the serpent mother, who was powerful enough to compete with the whale god, had a head smashed by a single stone. The The village chief turned to look at Bai, his wariness turning into fear. Even for a martial artist, this was too exaggerated, wasn't it? You mere human, how dare you treat me like this? The giant serpent roared angrily. Its remaining 11 heads stared at Bai with madness in their eyes. It hadn't been hurt in a long time. I have been hiding here to recover in order to avoid the whale god's pursuit. You are just a human. How dare you overstep your place? Even if it means risking exposure, I will. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As the giant serpent roared, 10 more small stones flew through the air, directly smashing 10 of the giant serpent's heads. Scarlet blood poured out like a fountain, dyeing the entire lake red. A strong smell of blood filled every part of the cave. The giant serpent, with only one head left, was no longer filled with anger, but with boundless fear. This monster! Without caring about anything else, it dove into the water and tried to escape to the sea. The man who had just appeared was far stronger than it had ever imagined. The pressure Bai exerted was even stronger than the whale god. This was probably a real god. Bai calmly watched the giant serpent's massive figure swim frantically underwater. He merely raised his hand and slightly clenched his fingers. The giant serpent, who was swimming under the water, seemed to be squeezed by an invisible force and finally twisted into a ball. The village chief by the lake stared at the huge shadow beneath the water, his body trembling violently and his breathing becoming extremely rapid. Serpent mother? Bang! Just as the village chief spoke, the giant serpent's body exploded and countless pieces of flesh flew out of the water. The huge lake was instantly dyed red, and the blood flowed toward the ocean. The village chief was so frightened by what had happened that he died on the spot and fell to the ground. So he was scared to death? Bai glanced at the village chief lying on the shore of the lake, a hint of surprise in his eyes. Bai thought for a moment, then used his spirit force to wrap the village chief's body, helping him reform his still intact soul and creating a new village chief. After all, the village chief was the most important figure in Whale God Village. Regardless of how dark his heart might have been, on the surface he was a respected elder who was loved by the villagers. Tadasha also respected him very much. If a person like that died in the sacred site on the first day Bai woke up, everyone would suspect Bai. Although Bai had killed the giant serpent and the village chief for the sake of Whale God Island, the villagers who didn't know the truth wouldn't appreciate his actions. They would just treat him as a murderer. While Bai didn't care about the other villagers' opinions of him, he didn't want Tatasha to feel guilty and blame herself. As the person who had rescued Bai, after this incident, Tatasha and her grandfather would definitely be attacked by the other villagers. Therefore, the village chief couldn't die. At least not now. After resurrecting the village chief, Bai erased all his memories of the serpent mother. He also removed all the darkness from his soul, turning him into a pure and good person. After doing all that, Bai casually destroyed the serpent god statue, cleaned up the corpses in the lake, restarted the whale god statue, and then disappeared. Inside the cave, nothing seemed to have happened, except for the village chief lying on the ground. Bai returned to the village. He stood in the sky above the village, looking at the smoke rising from Tatasha's home, and muttered, "My debt has been repaid." After saying goodbye, "I'll leave Whale God Island." Bai condensed a farewell letter in his hand and sent it to the front of Tatasha's house. As he was about to leave, he suddenly heard a deafening roar from the distance. Roar! The whale god? Bai looked toward the sound and saw that the whale god had once again leapt out of the sea and was twisting in the air. However, this time, the whale god didn't fall back into the sea. Instead, it created a massive wave that was heading toward Whale God Island. Did it smell the blood of the giant serpent and head over here? Bai watched the whale god swimming toward Whale God Island. There was no emotion in his eyes. He suddenly noticed some fishing boats near the shore of Whale God Island. Those are... Bai's pupils slightly constricted when he saw the fishing boats. He remembered Tatasha mentioning that her grandfather had gone out to fish. One of those fishing boats must be Tatasha's grandfather's boat. They saved me once, and I cannot stand idly by and watch them die. Realizing this, Bai's eyes narrowed slightly. He immediately moved towards the fishing boats near the shore. He then used his spirit force to lift all the fishing boats up. What's happening? The boat is flying. The fishermen on the boats suddenly found themselves rising into the air, which frightened them completely, and they began screaming. Among the flying fishing boats, one of the fishermen saw Baiyu standing in the air and exclaimed, "It's you? The person who fainted by the sea." Clearly, that fisherman was Tatasha's grandfather. "It's dangerous here. The whale god is attacking. I'm sending you back," Baiyu explained patiently and used his spirit force to calm the fisherman's emotions. The whale god is attacking? Why? After hearing Baiyu's words, Tatasha's grandfather was stunned for a moment. Then, he looked towards the transparent barrier and saw that the whale god was leading a massive wave and rapidly headed towards Whale God Island. "Oh my god! Whale god above! What's happening?" Tatasha's grandfather exclaimed in shock. His pupils were shaking. If that massive wave were to crash into Whale God Island, the entire island and all of its inhabitants would be swallowed by the ocean. Go back? Baiyu didn't explain further to the fishermen. He sent all the fishing boats back to the beach and then stood in the air alone to face the menacing whale god. At this time, all the villagers who had heard the commotion had run out of their homes. They saw Baiyu standing in the air and the whale god, who was quickly approaching Whale God Island with a massive wave in tow. Why is this happening? Why is the whale god coming to Whale God Island? This has never happened before. Who angered the whale god? Oh no, we're going to die. All the villagers saw the whale god attacking and knelt down, crying out in despair. The massive figure and the overwhelming waves had painted despair on everyone's faces. The whale god was clearly intending to destroy Whale God Island. Tatasha also ran out of her house. She saw Baiyu's farewell letter and saw Baiyu standing alone in the sky, facing the whale god. Her expression became complicated. "Baiyu, who are you?" At this time, the whale god, with its massive wave, had reached the outskirts of Whale God Island. The powerful barrier could not withstand the whale god's massive size and instantly shattered. The whale god whipped up a massive wave and charged towards Whale God Island. In its eyes, the lives of the inhabitants of Whale God Island didn't matter. It only had its prey in its sights. Roar! The whale god roared and charged towards the sacred site to the north of the village. Its prey, the serpent mother, was there. Baiyu looked at the attacking whale god and said calmly, "Compared to the big guy outside, you are still far too weak." With that, Baiyu raised his hand and said softly, "Freeze." A strange energy fluctuation spread from Baiyu's palm. The whale god and the massive wave were frozen in place in midair in an instant. The world fell silent. Chapter 265. The Aura of the Nameless, Limitless Sword. The massive body of the whale god, along with the overwhelming wave. All of it was frozen in place. All the villagers of Whale God Village were mesmerized by the spectacular sight in the sky. They seemed to have witnessed a true deity. What is such power? Everyone stared blankly at Baiyu. The whale god, which they had worshipped, was like an ant in front of Baiyu. Unconsciously, the beliefs of the inhabitants of Whale God Island had been changed by Baiyu. Baiyu didn't care what the people of Whale God Island thought of him. At this moment, all his attention was on the whale god that he had frozen in place. Baiyu wanted to find a connection between this whale god and the beast that had swallowed him, but unfortunately, the whale god in front of him was just an ordinary sea beast. The reason it was called a god by the residents of Whale God Island was probably because it often lingered around the island, and island creatures naturally worshipped powerful beings. It was that simple. Moreover, after freezing the whale god, Baiyu realized that the barrier on Whale God Island had nothing to do with the whale god. Baiyu guessed that the barrier had been created by the first group of people who had come to Whale God Island to escape the war. Also, to avoid being discovered by the whale god. The reason they had set the barrier to only allow people to enter and not leave was probably because they were afraid that someone might reveal the location of Whale God Island, bringing about a catastrophe. After learning about this forgotten history, Baiyu shook his head and smiled. The pity in his eyes as he looked at the whale god had completely disappeared. Since your existence is of no benefit to Whale God Island, and you may even threaten its safety, then you have no reason to exist. Baiyu said calmly, and the hand he had raised clenched slightly. Crack, crack. The whale god's body, which was even larger than the entire island, began to twist rapidly before the shocked eyes of the whale god island residents, and then exploded. Blood rained down from the sky, and the blood of the whale god dyed the entire island red. However, there was no smell of blood on the island. Instead, a strange fragrance appeared. Nourished by the whale god's powerful life force, the plants on the island began to grow rapidly. The bodies of the creatures on the island also became stronger after being exposed to the blood. Many of the residents of Whale God Island had become several times stronger than before. The whale god's power had been completely absorbed by Whale God Island. After dealing with the whale god, Baiyu waved his hand casually, and the overwhelming waves turned into water vapor and flew back into the sky. It then formed a heavy rain over Whale God Island, washing away the blood that had lost its power. After doing all this, Baiyu turned around and looked at Whale God Island. Finally, his gaze fell on Tatasha. Then, Baiyu announced to everyone on Whale God Island, "People of Whale God Island, the evil god Whale God has been eliminated. I will reshape the barrier outside of Whale God Island. Your peaceful lives will not be disturbed from now on. However, the barrier on Whale God Island will no longer stop you from leaving. You are free to choose whether you want to go out and explore the outside world. What I have done for you is to repay the kindness I owe to Tatasha's family and is a gift from Tatasha to you all." As Baiyu's voice faded away, all the residents on Whale God Island simultaneously turned to look at Tatasha and her grandfather, their eyes filled with shock and gratitude. They had not expected that Tatasha's family could actually save a god, not to mention anything else. The rain of the whale god's blood had completely changed the physiques of everyone on Whale God Island and given everyone the opportunity to become martial artists. For this reason alone, the residents of Whale God Island owed Tatasha's family a great debt. Tatasha was suddenly singled out by Baiyu. At this moment, she was a little overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. She had never been the center of such a crowd before. She held Baiyu's farewell letter tightly in her hand and looked up to seek Baiyu's help, but Baiyu in the sky had already disappeared. Baiyu? Tatasha stared blankly at the sky. Although Baiyu was just a fleeting passerby in her life, in such a short time, Baiyu had left an indelible mark on her life. After this incident, Tatasha became the saint of Whale God Island. At the same time, many of the young people on Whale God Island chose to leave the island and explore the world. Because of the enhancement from the whale god's blood, those young people all made a name for themselves, and many became unrivaled martial artists. Gradually, Whale God Island also became a famous cultivation site in the world, and the statue of Baiyu replaced the statue of the whale god and became the deity worshipped on Whale God Island. Of course, all of this was in the future. After leaving Whale God Island, Baiyu immediately went to the mainland and used his spirit force to cover the continent and read some information about this world. This vast continent was known as the Land of Gaia by all beings, who all worshipped the same creator god, Gaia. This was the interesting thing about the Land of Gaia. The Land of Gaia was incredibly vast, with an area comparable to an entire universe. The countries on the continent were as numerous as the stars in the sky. Each country had a different culture and different mythologies. Even the cultivation levels of martial artists were not unified in the Land of Gaia, and different regions had their own names. Yet, despite that, everyone in this world worshipped the same creator god, Gaia. This made it hard for Baiyu to not connect the name of Gaia to the beast that had swallowed him. Forget it, now is not the time to investigate the name of that beast. Finding the nameless, limitless sword and yearning and leaving the beast's belly as soon as possible is the best course of action, Baiyu said to himself and began to strengthen his spirit force, carefully searching a certain area of the Land of Gaia. Although Baiyu, the nameless, limitless sword, and yearning had all suffered serious injuries when they were separated, there were no powerful experts in the Land of Gaia. Even if the nameless, limitless sword and yearning were seriously injured, they wouldn't be in any particularly deadly danger. As long as the nameless, limitless sword or yearning recovered a little, Bai would be able to locate them. Found it. The aura of the nameless, limitless sword. As Bai continued to strengthen the spirit force he was using to search for the nameless, limitless sword and Yuing, he quickly sensed the faint aura of the nameless, limitless sword in the far north of the land of Gaia. However, the aura of the nameless, limitless sword appeared for a moment and then completely disappeared. Bai could no longer feel it. Looking at the situation, the damage to the nameless, limitless sword is more serious than I thought. I must retrieve it immediately. Realizing that the aura of the nameless, limitless sword had completely disappeared, Bai understood that the state of the nameless, limitless sword was probably very bad. He immediately tore open space and traveled across the entire land of Gaia, heading to the far north. He crossed billions of light years in an instant. Bai came out of the space crack and arrived in a land of ice and snow. Here, there was a blizzard all year round, and visibility was less than 5 meters. The moment Bai arrived, he heard the roar of a giant dragon from afar. Roar! A deafening sound came from the distance. Bai looked towards the sound and saw a young man holding a sword and shield, battling against a beast that looked like a Western dragon. Chapter 266, The Boy and the Dragon. To actually see a living person in a place this terrible? How peculiar. Bai saw the young man with the sword and shield, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. In this blizzard, there were no people for thousands of miles. The young man's equipment was in tatters, and his strength was not strong. It was a miracle that he was able to get here and fight with the dragon. An interesting kid, but it's a shame he's no match for that dragon. Bai was commenting on this strange scene, but he didn't plan on getting involved. He had come to the far north to look for his nameless, limitless sword, and his nameless, limitless sword was also in danger. Before retrieving his sword, he didn't plan on doing anything else. No longer focusing on the young man who was struggling to fight, Bai covered the entire far north with his spirit force and prepared to dig 3 feet into the ground to find his nameless, limitless sword. Not long after Bai released his spirit force, he found the nameless, limitless sword buried more than 10 meters under the ice, covered in nicks and dents. However, it was a coincidence that the place where the nameless, limitless sword was buried was exactly the place where the young man and the dragon were fighting. Bai looked at the young man and the dragon and couldn't help but say, "What a coincidence. It seems that fate wants to save this young man. Fine, I'll help him out this once." After finding the nameless, limitless sword and confirming that it was not damaged, Bai felt much better. He reached into the void and retrieved it from afar. Bai retrieved the nameless, limitless sword from under the ice and took it into his body, where he would nourish it with the karma flame lotus. When Bai was recovering the nameless, limitless sword, the young man was hit hard by the dragon's claw. The armor on his chest was torn to pieces, and 3 huge bloody wounds were left on his body. Is this the end? The young man lay on the ground, his scarlet blood staining the snow. The extreme cold made it so that he couldn't even feel the pain from his wounds. He looked at the roaring dragon, and his consciousness and vision gradually became blurred. "Lucia, it was my incompetence. It seems that I can't save you. I'll be taking my leave before you," the young man said to himself as he began to reflect on his short and ordinary life. The most glorious moment of his life was when he had stepped forward to do everything for Lucia and traveled thousands of miles north to slay the dragon. "My life is over. Young man, your life has only just begun." Just then, Bai's voice sounded in the young man's ears. Soon after, the young man felt a warm current enter his body, warming his freezing body. The claw marks on his chest gradually healed. What is this? The young man's consciousness gradually became clear. He looked around with confusion. Before he could figure out what had happened, he saw a man wearing simple cloth clothing but was so handsome it was unreal, slowly walking towards him. Bai held out his hand to the young man and asked with a smile, "Are you all right?" The young man instinctively grabbed Bai's hand and stood up. His eyes were filled with confusion, and he instinctively asked, "You are?" "Just a passerby. I came here to retrieve something that belongs to me, and I happened to see you fighting a dragon. I only took action because I wanted to help you, nothing else. However, I'm still very curious. What is a 15 or 16-year-old kid doing in this freezing wasteland? Just as the young man was about to answer, he saw the dragon appear behind Baiyu, preparing its frost breath. Seeing the dragon about to launch a sneak attack, the young man's pupils contracted sharply. He quickly reminded Baiyu, "Be careful." Before the young man could even finish the word, the neck and body of the dragon, who was about to exhale, twisted rapidly. All the bones in its body snapped. Bang! The next moment, the dragon crashed to the ground, without another breath. Sfinger, the legendary ice ancient dragon, is dead just like that? The young man stared blankly at the ice dragon that had fallen on the snow. His body was trembling slightly, and his mind was blank. What had just happened had completely exceeded his imagination. The ice ancient dragon, Sfinger, was a legendary creature from the north. It had existed for thousands of years and had countless legends surrounding it. The warriors who had died in Sfinger's hands could fill an entire mountain. But now, Sfinger was dead just like that? The young man thought he was dreaming. Baiyu didn't even turn his head and asked the young man, "Young man, I saved you, but you still haven't answered my question." Hearing Baiyu's words, the young man finally regained his senses. He looked at Baiyu with reverence and immediately replied, "Lucia was cursed by the frost witch. We need a giant tooth from the ice ancient dragon's finger to lift the curse. So, you braved the journey thousands of miles to this godforsaken place to challenge the dragon?" Baiyu raised an eyebrow slightly. "With your current strength, it's a miracle that you even made it here alive, let alone try to slay a dragon." Although that dragon was as weak as a breeze in Baiyu's eyes, it was an invincible being for this young man. Even if the young man's strength had increased 10 times, he would still not be a match for that dragon. "I also know that I'm no match for Sfinger, but if I don't step forward, Lucia will die." "Who is Lucia? Your little girlfriend?" Baiyu asked with a smile. Suddenly being asked that question by Baiyu, the young man's already red face became even redder. He lowered his head shyly and whispered, "No, I just like Lucia. For someone you like, you actually dared to risk your life and come here to slay a dragon. You are truly a man of passion." Baiyu shook his head and smiled. "Well, I have nothing to do right now. I'll send you back first. In your current condition, even if I save you, you won't be able to make it back alive." Now, Baiyu still couldn't sense Yu Ying's aura. It meant that Yu Ying was still unconscious. Instead of wasting his effort now, it was better to wait for Yu Ying to wake up and actively release his aura so that he could find him. Although Baiyu could force himself to turn over the entire land of Gaia and even the ocean in order to find Yu Ying wasn't the nameless, limitless sword, and Baiyu wouldn't waste that much effort specifically looking for him. For Baiyu, as long as Yu Ying was still alive, it was enough. It didn't matter how much suffering Yu Ying had to endure. "Why, you're going to send me back?" The young man's eyes lit up when he heard Baiyu's words. He had run out of food and was worried about how to get back. He was too embarrassed to ask Baiyu for help. Now that Baiyu had taken the initiative to offer, it was a great help. Baiyu chuckled. "Yes, what's your name?" The young man said excitedly, "Sir, my name is Walker." Chapter 267. A sudden piece of bad news. "Oh, right, sir. What should I call you?" After introducing himself, Walker respectfully asked Baiyu. "Everyone calls me Mr. Bai." "Okay, then, I'll call you Mr. Bai." Walker bowed to Baiyu, then asked, "Mr. Bai, before we leave, could you give me one of Sfinger's teeth?" After all, Sfinger was killed by Baiyu. Walker didn't dare to take any spoils of war without Baiyu's permission. At this point, Walker became afraid that Baiyu would refuse and quickly said, "Mr. Bai, don't worry, I won't forget your kindness. I will definitely find a way to repay you." "You want that dragon's tooth to save your little girlfriend, right?" Baiyu asked with a smile. "Lucia, she's not?" Walker's face turned red again. "Boys will be boys. I've been through it, so what are you being shy for?" Baiyu shook his head and smiled at Walker's shyness. "That dragon is useless to me. You can take whatever you want from its body." Although Baiyu didn't believe that any curse needed to be broken with a dragon tooth, Walker was so enthusiastic at this point that he couldn't bring himself to dampen Walker's spirits. To Baiyu, that dragon was just a useless pile of flesh. Instead of letting it rot in the wilderness and be eaten by other beasts, it was better to use it to fulfill this young man's little wish. Thank you so much, Mr. Bai. I, Walker, will never forget your great kindness. After obtaining Bayu's permission, Walker excitedly bowed to Bayu. Then, he pulled out a small knife from his waist and began to hack at the dragon's teeth despite the strong winds. Bayu watched Walker work hard on the dragon's teeth and reminded him, its heart, dragon gall, and a core inside its body should also be treasures for you. Don't forget to take them. The dragon's heart, I can take that too? Walker looked at Bayu in disbelief. His greatest wish now was to get a dragon tooth. He never expected to get the heart of an ice-ancient dragon. In his hometown, there were many stories about dragons. Countless ordinary people had become heroes after eating a dragon's heart. Walker never expected that he would have a chance to become a legend. I told you, that dragon is useless to me. Take whatever you want. It would just be a waste if you left it. Thank you, Mr. Bai. Walker thanked Bayu again, then devoted himself to dissecting the dragon. This dragon had been crushed by Bayu. Its scales and muscles had all been broken, so it didn't take much effort for Walker to cut open the dragon's belly and peel off its skin. In less than 2 hours, Walker used the dragon skin and tendons to make a simple backpack. It was full of the dragon's treasures and some dragon meat to eat on the road. This time, he had gained a lot. If he could successfully bring the things in the backpack back to his village, he would become a new legend. Mr. Bai, sorry for the wait. Let's go. Walker said excitedly to Bayu, while carrying the dragon skin backpack, which was even taller than himself. Bayu shook his head and smiled, seeing Walker, this small boy, carrying such a big backpack, and asked, Where is your home? I'll send you back. Walk towards the south. Once you get out of the ice plains, cross a snowy mountain, and walk along the icy river for about 100 miles, you'll reach the village. Mr. Bai, this time it might take us 3 months, so I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you. Before Walker could finish speaking, he saw the space in front of him twist slightly. Then, he arrived at the entrance of his village. The blizzard was gone. What entered Walker's eyes was his familiar village where he had grown up. Walker stared blankly at the village in front of him. His mind was blank. What happened? We've arrived. Bayu looked at the dumbfounded Walker and smiled, asking, Won't you invite me to sit at your house? Hearing Bayu's words, Walker slapped himself twice. After feeling the pain, he looked at Bayu in disbelief and said, Mr. Bai, how did you do that? Crossing 1,000 miles in the blink of an eye. Could it be that he was a legendary spatial mage? At this moment, Walker's admiration for Bayu reached its peak. Compared to his admiration for Bayu, his joy after returning to his hometown was not as strong. Returning so easily made him feel like he was in a dream. Walker. At this moment, a woman who had come from the village to wash clothes by the river saw Walker with a dragon backpack, covered in blood, and wearing tattered clothes. She looked as if she had seen a ghost, and dropped her basin of clothes directly on the ground. Auntie Jill? Hearing the familiar voice, Walker also looked towards the woman in surprise. Before Walker could speak, Auntie Jill rushed forward and hugged Walker tightly, crying, You brat! You suddenly left a letter saying you were going to slay a dragon, and everyone thought you were dead? Auntie Jill, I'm about to suffocate, Walker said, struggling to breathe as Auntie Jill hugged him. Auntie Jill then realized what she was doing, and immediately let go of Walker, then asked Walker with concern, You kid, where have you been for the last few months? And what's that big bag you're carrying? Auntie Jill, it's a long story, but Lucia is saved. Walker said excitedly, I got Sfinger's teeth. Walker. Hearing Walker's words, Auntie Jill's expression instantly turned strange. She had a hesitant look on her face, as if she wanted to say something but didn't. Bayu, seeing Auntie Jill's expression, realized what was going on. He used his spirit force to scan the village and found a house that was filled with the aura of a curse. However, there was no one in that house. Auntie Jill? Walker also noticed Auntie Jill's strange expression. The smile on his face gradually disappeared, and he quickly asked, Auntie Jill, did something happen to Lucia? Walker, Calm down. There are some things. Bang. Before Auntie Jill could finish, Walker threw down the dragon backpack, darted into the village, and ran towards Lucia's house. Along the way, Walker attracted the attention of many villagers. Walker! Auntie Jill called out to Walker several times. Finally, she looked at Walker's back as he disappeared from her sight and sighed heavily. Sigh. That poor child. After sighing, Auntie Jill looked at Bayou and asked, You are Walker's friend, right? Yes, Bayou nodded. Auntie Jill said bitterly, I'm sorry you had to witness that. Walker lost his parents when he was young. I raised him alone. Without parents, he was bullied in the village. Lucia was his only friend. And then sigh. Auntie Jill sighed heavily again, unable to continue. Bayou picked up Walker's dragon backpack and asked Auntie Jill, I heard Walker say that Lucia was cursed. Can you tell me the details? Sigh. Lucia is also an unlucky child, Auntie Jill nodded. It's a long story. Let's go home and talk about it. No matter what, Walker is still alive, and that's enough. Chapter 268. An Unexpected Discovery. While following Auntie Jill home, Bayou got a deeper understanding of the story between Walker and Lucia. Walker's parents were both soldiers who had sacrificed their lives while fighting for their country. However, the compensation money for their family was taken by a corrupt official. At the same time, Walker's parents were slandered as deserters by that corrupt official, causing Walker to be disliked by the villagers since he was young and he had always been bullied by his peers. Lucia's mother was a witch who had fled from the West. Although the Ice Kingdom that Walker lived in did not have laws to slaughter witches, the villagers had a natural fear of witches. Therefore, Lucia had no friends in the village either. And those two poor children had become the best of friends. But not long ago, a mage from the West had come and captured Lucia's mother. He cursed Lucia, claiming that only the teeth of the ice ancient dragon's finger could lift Lucia's curse. The villagers were already afraid of Lucia and didn't want to be associated with her family, let alone get the tooth of an ancient dragon for Lucia. After the mage took Lucia's mother away, everyone had assumed that the cursed Lucia was doomed to die. It was at this time that Walker secretly prepared his equipment and food and left the village that very night, heading north to slay the dragon. They are indeed two unfortunate children. After hearing the story from Auntie Jill, Bayou sighed, and he somewhat understood why Walker would risk everything to travel north to slay the dragon. It wasn't because he was blinded by love. It was because Lucia was the only light and hope in his life. Now that his light was about to be extinguished, Walker was naturally willing to sacrifice everything to save it. Oh right, according to the curse left by that mage, Lucia could only last for half a year, but there's no one in her house. Where did she go? Bayou then asked. Auntie Jill found it strange how Bayou knew that Lucia was not at home, but she didn't think too much about it and said, not long after Walker left, the villagers were afraid that Lucia's curse would spread, so they drove Lucia out of the village. Seeing that the child was so pitiful, I hid her in a small wooden house to the west of the village and went to give her food every day. But a few days ago, when I went to deliver her food, she was gone. I guess that child couldn't endure the torture of the curse, so she... Auntie Jill didn't continue. She had seen what Lucia looked like when the curse acted up. In her opinion, no one could withstand that kind of pain. I understand. After learning about Lucia's whereabouts, Bayou put the dragon backpack in Auntie Jill's house. I'm going to go see Walker now. Please take care of Walker's backpack for me, and don't let anyone else see it. There are treasures inside that are enough to change your family's fate. Auntie Jill was stunned. She subconsciously nodded. Before she could ask Bayou what was inside the backpack, Bayou had already left Auntie Jill's house and headed towards Lucia's house. At this time, Walker was kneeling at Lucia's door, crying, while a lot of villagers surrounded him, pointing fingers at him. Many of them had mocking expressions. That kid Walker, he said he was going to slay a dragon. I thought he had finally grown some guts, but he still came back with his tail between his legs. Hey, his parents were deserters, and he's a deserter too. What's so strange about that? I don't know how he has the face to cry at Lucia's house. The surrounding villagers kept mocking Walker. In their opinion, if Walker had really gone to attack the Ice Ancient Dragon, He would either have died on the road or at the hands of the Ice Ancient Dragon. There was no way he would have returned alive. The fact that Walker was still alive was proof that he was a deserter. "Excuse me." Bayu's calm voice sounded from the back of the crowd. Then, the villagers felt a huge force pushing them away. "Damn! Who is it? Why are you pushing?" A hot-tempered young man turned back impatiently, only to see an invisible force pushing them away while Bayu, wearing a simple cloth robe, slowly walked in. The young man immediately lowered his head and kept quiet, not daring to meet Bayu's eyes. Although Bayu was wearing the simple clothes that Tatasha had woven, the aura of a powerful person that he was naturally exuding was enough to make everyone breathless. For a moment, everyone was silent. They automatically scattered to both sides, making way for Bayu. Walker, who was still crying, saw Bayu approaching, and said through tears, "Mister, by Lucia, she's not necessarily dead. Follow me." Bayu said calmly, and then space twisted. He and Walker disappeared on the spot, causing the surrounding villagers to exclaim, "D disappeared? Is he a great mage of the Empire? How did Walker get to know such a great man? Oh my God, Walker is going to be rich. Will he take revenge on us in the future? We're finished. We have to treat Walker well from now on. Let's go to Jill's place and repair our relationship with her." As Bayu left with Walker, the villagers' thoughts about Walker completely changed. They only lived in a small village that was ruled by a viscount, but a great mage of the Empire was someone that even a duke would respect. In their opinion, Walker was about to rise above everyone. At this time, Walker was completely unaware of the villagers' opinions, nor did he care. He followed Bayu to a small wooden house west of the village. "Mr. Bai." Walker's eyes were still swollen and red. He looked at the wooden house in front of him and said to Bayu, "This is the house where hunters used to temporarily rest when they entered the mountains. Why did you bring me here?" "Just watch," Bayu said calmly and lightly snapped his fingers. The time around them began to flow backward. The images around the wooden house rapidly reversed, quickly rewinding to 5 days ago, when a young girl with a very pale face pushed open the door. "Lucia!" Walker exclaimed when he saw the image of Lucia. He instinctively rushed towards Lucia, but passed through the image. He couldn't understand what was happening now, and could only look to Bayu for help. Bayu said, "I've reversed time to 5 days ago. Follow Lucia and see where she went."
Yes.
Walker saw Lucia, and hope was renewed within him. He quickly followed Lucia's image and left the house, heading towards the mountains in the west. Along the way, the weak Lucia struggled to walk. She would fall every few steps and was soon covered in mud and injuries. Walker, who was behind Lucia, watched with heartache. However, he already knew that this had happened in the past, and he couldn't change it. He could only clench his fists and silently pray that Lucia would be okay. Walker and Bayu followed Lucia's image into the mountains, past the thorny bushes, and finally reached a valley filled with flowers. Lucia's image disappeared there. Bayu's pupils contracted slightly as he saw the flower-filled valley in front of him. A huge wave of shock rose in his heart. This valley, he had seen it in AI Shuang's memories. Chapter 269, Another Curse. This is impossible. Upon seeing the valley before her, Bayu gasped involuntarily. What were the odds of such a coincidence? Yet, after carefully replaying the scene she'd witnessed in AI Shuang's mind, Bayu realized that this valley was indeed identical to AI Shuang's homeland. Did AI Shuang come from inside this giant beast? No, that's impossible. Bayu shook her head, dismissing her own conjecture. Putting aside the already improbable odds of randomly encountering a giant beast outside the primordial chaos, and the even slimmer chance of it being connected to AI Shuang's home, there was also the matter of Ying, a member of the Skywalkers, who had no recognition of the beast that devoured them. That alone raised too many questions. "Mr. Bai, are you not feeling well?" Seeing that Bayu's expression was somewhat off, Walker asked quietly. Hearing Walker's concern, Bayu snapped out of her thoughts and shook her head. "I'm fine, just thinking about some things. By the way, Walker, do you know where this place is?" "I don't." Walker shook his head solemnly. "It's strange. I've lived here for over 10 years, and I often come to this mountain to gather herbs. But this is the first time I've seen this valley. Also, Mr. Bai, although we don't have the year-round blizzards like the northern lands, the temperature here is generally low throughout the year. Flowers like these simply shouldn't bloom in our environment. Hearing Walker's words, Bai once again fell into contemplation. Was this valley a temporary apparition? After a moment, Bai said to Walker, regardless, let's go into the valley and take a look. Lucia's lingering shadow disappeared at the entrance, which means she's been inside these past few days. All right, let's go in now. After hearing Bai's words, Walker couldn't stay put any longer. He rushed into the valley in a flash, eager to find any trace of Lucia. Bai didn't immediately follow. Instead, she released AI Shuang from her small world and asked her, AI Shuang, take a look at this place. Is this your homeland? AI Shuang looked at the valley ahead, full of blooming flowers. A flicker of uncertainty appeared in her eyes as she said, it feels familiar, but it's not quite. The environment outside the valley is different. The environment outside the valley is different? Bai seized the key point, asking further, is it possible that the external environment has changed due to the passage of time?
No.
AI Shuang shook her head. In my memory, my home has always remained the same. I am certain this is not my home. I see. Bai nodded. She had a growing suspicion in her heart. Then, she asked AI Shuang, do you want to stay outside with me for some fresh air? Or go back to the small world? I want to go back, AI Shuang said. This place makes me feel very uncomfortable. Understood. After confirming her partial conjecture with AI Shuang, Bai brought her back into her small world, then followed Walker into the valley. The valley was filled with all sorts of blooming flowers, the air thick with their fragrant perfume. Strangely, aside from these beautiful flowers, there wasn't a single other living creature in the valley. The whole valley was eerily silent. Bai used her divine sense to scan the valley. There weren't even butterflies, bees, or any insects to be seen. Apart from the flowers, there was nothing else in the valley. On the surface, the valley was beautiful, but its ecosystem was incredibly peculiar, not like something formed naturally. Lucia. Walker called out Lucia's name among the flowers, his voice echoing through the valley. However, Lucia didn't respond. Instead, the echoes of Walker's voice lingered, unwilling to dissipate, filling the entire valley with his reverberations. The valley was becoming increasingly noisy. Something is definitely wrong. Bai observed all of this from behind, noticing that Walker's voice simply couldn't escape the valley. Furthermore, after Walker's voice spread through the air, the energy of his voice not only wasn't being depleted, but was instead amplified by the valley walls. After just a few cries, the entire valley was filled with his voice. It seemed as though it wouldn't be long before this valley, filled with flowers, would be saturated by Walker's voice, and Walker would be shaken to death by his own echoes. At this moment, Walker, anxious about Lucia's safety, was completely unaware of the increasing volume of the echoes. In fact, he seemed as if he had fallen under a spell, shouting louder and louder. Gradually, blood started trickling out of Walker's ears. That's enough. Bai's voice cut through the echoes. All of the reverberations in the valley instantly disappeared. Only then did Walker snap back to reality. He felt the intense pain in his ears and looked at Bai in shock. Mr. Bai, what just happened? There's something wrong with this valley. If you don't want to become deaf, try not to shout from now on. But what about Lucia? She's my responsibility. Bai said calmly, then walked to the center of the valley and gently stomped her foot. The ground at the center of the valley cracked, revealing a crystal coffin. And inside that crystal coffin lay Lucia. Lucia. When Walker saw Lucia lying in the crystal coffin, his pupils contracted violently. He was just about to rush forward when Bai stopped him. Don't go near her, she's okay. The instant Bai's voice fell, the crystal coffin quickly melted away. Lucia floated in midair, black tendrils of energy emanating from her body. Lucia. Looking at the current state of Lucia, Walker's eyes were filled with worry. He couldn't help but ask Bai, Mr. Bai, what happened to her? Bayu looked at Lucia and said, "She has two curses on her. One curse is relatively crude and low-level. It should have been cast by the mage who captured Lucia's mother. It's not a major concern. The other curse comes from some powerful entity. That curse is quite difficult to deal with. Even I cannot guarantee that I can remove that curse while ensuring Lucia's life isn't threatened. A curse that even Mr. Bai can't deal with? How could that be?" Despair showed on Walker's face. In his eyes, Bayu was already an omnipotent god. If the curse on Lucia was something that even Bayu couldn't remove, Walker couldn't imagine anyone else in the world who could break the curse on Lucia. Lucia. Walker fell to his knees, burying his fingers into the dirt. His body trembled uncontrollably, and blood vessels covered his eyes. At this moment, Bayu didn't have time to comfort Walker. All her attention was focused on the new curse plaguing Lucia. That curse didn't seem to originate from this world. It felt as if it had come from the void beyond. Perhaps, the powerful being who placed this curse on Lucia was somehow connected to AI Shuang and the Skywalkers. If Bayu could understand the motive of the powerful entity who cast the curse, she would have a better position in her future dealings with the Skywalkers. "What are you trying to express?" Bayu gazed at Lucia, floating in the air, gradually becoming lost in thought. Chapter 270, The Ogre Mask. Bayu analyzed the curse on Lucia. In a moment of distraction, it was as if she had fallen into a completely new world. When Bayu came to her senses again, she found that the surrounding environment had changed dramatically. The flowers were gone, and the ground was covered in scorched earth. Walker and Lucia had also disappeared. Floating in midair was nothing more than a tangled mess of black threads. That was the curse on Lucia. Am I trapped in an illusion? Bayu frowned slightly at the drastic change in the surrounding environment. She was just about to check what the situation was when the curse floating in the air suddenly attacked, shooting towards her. Sensing the danger, Bayu didn't dare to touch the curse before figuring out what was going on. She immediately retreated. The curse failed to hit Bayu. Instead, it sunk into the scorched earth. Immediately, a large amount of black threads surged from the curse and began spreading out in all directions. Just what the heck is that thing? Bayu stood in the air, watching the black threads spreading from below, her expression becoming serious. Bayu looked towards the outside of the valley and found that the world outside the valley had become a dull gray, devoid of life, like it was about to be destroyed. While Bayu was observing the surroundings, the black threads that were spreading through the ground suddenly accelerated after leaving the valley. After a few breaths, everything within Bayu's sight was covered by black threads. The entire land had been cursed. If this is an illusion, it's far too realistic. But if it isn't an illusion, how did I get here? Bayu stared at the cursed earth, her brain working at full speed as she tried to think of ways to escape this strange world. However, as Bayu was thinking, the curse covering the land seemed to have no intention of letting go of the only living being in this world. Large amounts of black threads burst from the ground, rushing towards Bayu. Limitless, unyielding sword. Bayu instinctively summoned the limitless, unyielding sword, unleashing sword energy to cut off all the incoming threads of the curse. However, when Bayu used the limitless, unyielding sword to cut the curse, she suddenly realized that she was truly in some kind of strange illusion. The original limitless, unyielding sword was severely damaged and is currently being nurtured within my body. But the limitless, unyielding sword in my hand isn't only intact, its power is even greater than before. Has the curse on Lucia pulled me into this strange illusion? How did that curse manage to do that? After confirming that she was in an illusion and not transported to a new world, Bayu knew how to handle the situation. No matter what kind of illusion it is, all things are variations on a single theme. As long as I maintain my sense of self and avoid being blinded by the illusion, I will be invincible. Bayu took a deep breath, completely emptied her mind, and discarded all her emotions, reaching a state of utter indifference. At this moment, the curse from the ground attacked Bayu again, but Bayu didn't intend to dodge. Instead, she closed her eyes. The threads of the curse wrapped around Bayu's body and weaved an ogre mask on her face. In the next instant, Lu Wen's cries for help, by land screams, the cries of anguish from all living beings in the three realms, and countless other negative emotions flooded into Bai Yu's mind, polluting her soul. The ogre mask on Bai Yu's face revealed a sinister smile. However, just as the threads of the curse were about to consume Bai Yu, she suddenly opened her eyes and placed her hand on the ogre mask on her face. A mere cursed illusion, presuming to use such paltry tricks to make me fall. You underestimate me too much. Bai Yu pressed down with her fingers, and the once grinning ogre mask suddenly revealed an expression of pain. A large number of black threads surged from the mask, piercing Bai Yu's skin and attempting to burrow into her soul. The pain that reached her soul continuously tortured Bai Yu. However, Bai Yu didn't even frown. She simply ripped the ogre mask off her face. Aha! A shrill scream resounded in the space. Bai Yu's surroundings suddenly spun around. The next moment, Bai Yu returned to the valley full of flowers. However, in Bai Yu's hand was the ogre mask she had torn off her face. This is... Bai Yu's pupils shrank slightly as she looked at the ogre mask in her hand. A storm brewed in her heart. The cursed mask in the illusion had come into the real world? Bai Yu held the ogre mask and looked at Lucia, who was suspended in the air. She found that the curse in Lucia's body had weakened considerably, leaving only remnants. Her curse is about to be cleared? Was it transferred to the ogre mask in my hand? Bai Yu was shocked. She looked to Walker, who was beside her. Walker's body was entangled with curses, and a nearly transparent ogre mask was on his face. Walker, like Bai Yu, had fallen into the illusion of the curse. However, the curse surrounding Walker was insignificant compared to the ogre mask in Bai Yu's hand, like a drop of water in the ocean. This curse can actually spread through sight. After seeing Walker's condition, Bai Yu understood. She used the ogre mask in her hand to absorb the curses from Lucia's and Walker's bodies. Bai Yu didn't even know why, but after she tore the ogre mask from her face in the illusion, she had developed a strange connection with the mask. She could now control the curse through the ogre mask. It was as if she was the master of this curse. Soon, the ogre mask absorbed all the curses in Lucia's and Walker's bodies. The moment the curse was removed, Walker yelled and then fell to the ground. His whole body was drenched in sweat. Fear still lingered in his eyes. Clearly, Walker had gone through some extremely unpleasant experiences in the cursed illusion. Mr. Bai. Walker found that he was back. He collapsed on the ground, looking at Bai Yu in fear. Just now it felt like I had entered a terrifying world. I know, I was there too. Bai Yu gently lowered Lucia from the air, removed the low-level curse from her body, and said to Walker, I've removed the curse in Lucia's body. She will awaken soon. Lucia's curse has been removed? Hearing Bai Yu's words, Walker's face instantly lit up with joy. He even forgot the terrifying ordeal he had just experienced. He quickly got up from the ground and said to Bai Yu with gratitude, Thank you so much, Mr. Bai. Okay, this valley is dangerous. You should take her to the wooden hut down the mountain and take good care of her. Yes. Walker immediately rushed to Lucia's side, carried her on his back, and quickly ran out of the valley. Although Walker's body was extremely weak from the curse, his footsteps were exceptionally steady, as if he didn't want Lucia to experience the slightest jolt. Bai Yu watched Walker's back. She didn't rush to follow. Instead, she looked back at the ogre mask in her hand. Bai Yu? As Bai Yu's gaze fell on the ogre mask, a ghostly, ethereal voice came from within the mask.